It has happened. Hark the herald angels sing. See how good a singer I am? I don't know if you guys know this or not, but a lot of people tell me that if I had not gone into a radio career, that some sort of a soloist career would have been a natural fit for me because of my dulcet tones.
That's
But
why they
it
have
has happened
Off-Broadway.
today. I was so excited. I got up. I'm getting ready. As Eddie Garrison will attest, I made sure that I was clean and hygienic and smelling fresh. Put on a different scent today.
Can't smell you today.
You have a cold?
No.
Okay, good. That means that I applied the proper amount. And here's the thing, Eddie. I know when I put on my cologne each day, if you can smell it, I put on too much because I like to keep there's a rule. You shouldn't smell me unless you're within arm's length, and I like you at 2 arms lengths, right? So it only goes without saying.
I thought we were close.
You guys, I'm like a proud dad today. I'm so excited. The news in the world of sports that came out this morning, I believe maybe last night or this morning, made me so happy for you guys. As you guys know, Eddie Garrison, Jimmy Cook, as you know, when it comes to sports, there are often times where you can see that I beam with pride for the two of you, where I get super excited when you get introduced to things for the first time or you experience things, and I live the excitement sometimes vicariously through the two of you, right? I recapture my youth through the two of you. Now, do you want to know what happened today that made me where I just had to step back, soak it in, absorb and smile a little bit, because it's the beauty of the constant cycle of sports?
Jimmy Cook was in the studio before you today?
That is not the correct answer, but that is a first. Yes, that's right. No, that's not the right answer.
I was also up late last night to vote in the Beatles poll that arrived at 1:20 in the morning.
Did you like the 4 that I came up with?
I did. Yes, I did.
Today's musical poll on the X Twitter from me is, of the 4 songs,
We'll play
which
those 4 songs, by
Beatles
the way.
song? What's that?
We'll play those 4 songs today.
Okay. Of the 4 songs that I picked for the Beatles, and I believe Jimmy is the one that said the Beatles should be today's band, which of these 4 songs is the best? Which one do you consider the best? Hey Jude, A Day in the Life, Let It Be, and Yesterday. If you don't mind me saying so, I did a nice job of coming up with 4 very difficult songs. What happened today that made me excited for you guys is I am under the assumption or understanding that it is not necessarily the first, but probably one of the few times that an athlete announced his retirement where you guys vividly and very, like, with the feeling of great recency, recall that athlete being drafted or entering into the professional ranks. You can remember them in high school or college, and you look at it and go, wow, time flies.
You are correct on that statement, yes.
Gordon Hayward, after 835 games, after averaging 15.2 points and 4.4 rebounds per game in those games, after being the number 9 pick in the 2010 NBA draft. If I'm not mistaken, he was, 1 spot ahead of Paul George? Is that right?
You are correct.
Gordon Hayward announces his retirement from the NBA. A very, very good career, one that Gordon Hayward, of course, is the classic example of, and I think people forget, he hit probably, a top 10 shot in Indiana high school basketball history, but because of, and I'm not getting ready to go into the whole, back in my day, class basketball, there would have been, but admittedly, hitting that shot and winning a class basketball championship for Brownsburg with a putback at the buzzer, if that had been the old days, yes, I'm going to say it that way, at Market Square Arena or Butler Fieldhouse, and it was a single-class tournament, it ranks right up there with, Stacey Turan's shot is one that people still talk about, and that wasn't even in the state finals, but it was in the Final Four. But, Scott Skiles' shot, there are a lot of, obviously, Bobby Plump. But nonetheless, a fabulous career, one that when he got to Butler, and there's a lesson to be had here. When Gordon Hayward got to Butler, he was a guy that kind of scrawny, kind of goofy looking, and immediately showed flashes where you could see that he was going to be a good player, and whoever would have guessed at that point that he would be a player that would be able to leave before all eligibility was expired to go and become a lottery pick in the NBA. But I think there's such an important lesson here for parents, coaches, and young people. And that lesson about Gordon Hayward is this. If you think about Gordon Hayward at Butler and what made him an NBA prospect, it was the ability to, on rotation of the basketball, on the wing, get the ball, and he had this really good, upon reaction to the ball, kind of pump fake side move he could do where you didn't know if he was going to drive, if he was going to pull up and shoot. He had obviously a very good knack for the angles of the ball. I know that's a weird thing that I say a lot about some players, but he had all of that. And I think what gets lost on people in today's day, more so than any other time that I can recall, you have parents that, and coaches and players, young people, that are specifying sports. My son's the number 1 9 and under baseball player. My son's or daughter is the number 1 point guard for the 11 and under AAU tournament. And they're playing 300 games a year, and they're playing in tournaments year-round. And in the wintertime, we're getting ready to go and take 2 weeks to go to Orlando for the Golf Academy or whatever it might be. Gordon Hayward was a title-level tennis player all the way through with his twin sister, all the way up and through like mid-high school when he went through a growth spurt. But like Tim Duncan, like Akeem Olajuwon, his footwork was so good because of the traits, the skills, and the disciplines he learned and the movement and the fluidity he learned in a completely different sport. And that's what benefited him in basketball. And his body grew into what you need to be the icing on the cake, athletically speaking, about the game of basketball. Yes, there's a ton of work ethic that goes into it. I realize that. But his footwork and just his movement was very underappreciated, and it all came together for him late at Butler, and he turned into clearly a very good to borderline elite-level NBA player before the leg injury that probably is part of the reason why his career has come to an end. But nonetheless, Jimmy, fabulous career for Gordon Hayward.
An incredible career. And you speak about the father time aspect of this, not just for Gordon Hayward, but for myself and Eddie as well. Having a player that was paramount in childhood basketball consumption in this state. My dad went to Butler, graduated from there. We had season tickets for years. My earliest basketball memories, non-Indiana division, are going to Butler games with my dad and being a part of Horizon League basketball and seeing this scrappy D1 team go through the years of having success within that conference, but for the most part, round of 64 or a Sweet 16 trip here or there. And you can go through the annals of Butler basketball history all the way back to the coaching days of Tony Hinkle and find great historic names. But Gordon Hayward is right up there, if not the very best of them, in terms of the impact that he had in just 2 years as a Butler Bulldog, what he was able to do leading Butler to their first national championship game in program history and really putting them on the map. There's a lot of elements that we get into for his NBA career, but because we are a local show, I'd like to, at least for a second, stay locally during his Butler tenure. Many players on that Butler team, Matt Howard, Sean Van Zandt, Avery Jukes, Zach Hahn, the coaching staff led by Brad Stevens, they deserve credit for what Butler was. But Gordon Hayward is a footprint figure for everything that put Butler on the map from that run to the title game and everything that happened beyond, culminating with their ascension into the Big East and being in a power basketball conference. None of that happens without him. And you're right, Jake, it almost didn't. He was an incredible tennis player. He was not ranked on Rivals, and if he was a 2 or a 3-star recruit at the time. He's an unranked 3-star prospect on Rivals at the time of his junior and senior campaigns. And he did get some late interest from Purdue and Matt Painter. I think maybe Michigan might have been involved very late. but he winds up going to Butler, and he has this. They were an embodiment of team basketball. That was one of the the Butler way mantra and all of that. But he was the straw that stirred that drink, at least for the first run to the title game. When he leaves, Shelvin Mack takes up that honor, as is Matt Howard. But that first run, he was the focal point of that team. And in terms of leaving a legacy, maybe it doesn't happen in the NBA game because he never fully reached the peak that you thought maybe he could due to the injury. But from a collegiate standpoint, that shot is still played every year. That just missed off the mark against Duke is still played every year in every NCAA tournament montage. You still see Hayward jerseys around Broader Bowl or around Hinkle Fieldhouse when you're there. I saw dozens of them when he was.
Is that why you're wearing a Butler shirt
today? That is
today?
why I'm wearing the Butler shirt today. As you know, I like to theme things every now and again, and that's another one for me here with the Butler shirt. But yeah, like he is a face of Butler basketball. He is a face of my generation of players dreaming of, wow, you could go from being a largely not talked about from a recruiting standpoint basketball player, go to a school, make an impact there, get to the NBA, and then have as long of a career as you did. He won in every aspect of an Indiana kid wanting to make it to the ultimate stage of basketball as an NBA player, and he succeeded at every step along the way in realizing that dream. So I'm sure we'll talk today about areas where maybe he didn't win a championship, and yeah, after that injury with the Celtics to his ankle, you could argue he was never the same player, but he inspired an entire generation, not just of Butler fans, but of basketball fans as a whole in this state, starting with the Brownsburg put back against Marion at the buzzer to the near half-court heave against Duke. He embodied everything that you would want out of what it means to be a great representative of community and a basketball legend in every sense at both the high school and collegiate level. I'm happy for him that he's able to go on his own terms.
Now, here's the other thing about Gordon Hayward. And by the way, big show lined up for you today. Tony East going to join us coming up at the top of the hour. About 45 minutes from now, we'll talk about the Pacers, really their roster kind of being set, but where things stand with them. And then, of course, yesterday, Tyrese Halliburton getting on the floor for Team USA, hitting a couple shots for them. David Wood's going to join us, I think the most noted Olympic writer here in the city of Indianapolis, the former Indianapolis Star writer who still covers the Olympics very, very closely and covered those Hayward Butler teams. So he will join us coming up at 1:30, and then Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts, at 2 o'clock.
His Underdogs book, Jake, which I'm sure is still available, covers a lot of the stories you mentioned, especially that tennis background for Hayward and how that team was formed. It would be a given the fact he covered the team as often as he did,
right.
But that's a great book covering that entire run.
Now, here's the other thing about Gordon Hayward that I think he deserves the most props. Is there any – and look, I'm comfortable saying this. I'm cool with it. I got no problem with this, okay? Is there any athlete that you can think of? Give me an athlete, Eddie Garrison, off the top of your head, in any sport that is a household name of the last 50 years. Go.
Shohei Ohtani?
Shohei Ohtani. Okay. We have no idea what Shohei Ohtani looked like when he was like 19 years old, though, right? Because he really hit the scene and burst onto it at probably, how old was he, 28?
Steph Curry.
Okay, Steph Curry's a good one. If you look at Steph Curry when he was a kid, there's, we've seen what he looks like most of his life because, they show photos of he with his dad and everything else.
Yeah.
Steph Curry, pretty much like when you look at him, you go, okay, that's, if you see him when he's like 17, you can go, well, that's Steph Curry. Is there any athlete ever, who did a better job of improving their presentation to the ladies more than Gordon Hayward? From age 16 to 26.
I remember laughing about that in high school. The picture of him as a sophomore at Butler to him in his fourth year in the league in Utah. And he looks like he just went a full-scale transformation.
He literally what is that? Now, who's the other athlete that I say looks like this? There's a kids TV show. My nieces and nephew used to watch it. It's based out of Iceland. And I always forget the name of it. I'll have to look it up. There's a kids TV show that it's not a cartoon. It's actual actors, but they have like plastic hair basically and like perfectly squared jaws. Gordon Hayward looked like that by the time he was like, I mean, the guy, when he went to Utah, I don't think of Utah as, and Salt Lake City, I think is probably actually very cool. So I'm being intentionally flippant here. But when I think of Utah, I don't think of Utah as being Rodeo Drive of hair salons. But that guy found clearly somebody that was like the best hairstylist. He literally had perfect hair. He was like completely chiseled. And he looked like a runway model, right?
Yeah.
He looked like, honestly, if you put a cashmere coat on him and a Burberry scarf, he is basically the guy that is in a Calvin Klein cologne ad in the middle of GQ, right? I mean, I'm saying it. He's a good-looking dude, right?
No, you're not wrong. But it gets the comedy punch when you see, and you can see it in the background of
He looked like Howdy Doody.
Of the tribute post Butler had on Twitter today. They have him at different stages of his career, but it's like silhouetted, so it's tough to really make it out. But Jake, I pulled it up now. It's bad for the audio audience, but just look at a picture of him. Just Google Gordon Hayward Butler, and then look at his last photo with the Jazz or with the Hornets. Like it's two different people.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? By the way, Lazy Town is the name of the show I'm thinking of, and he looks like the guy in the like striped jumper. Lazy Town.
Jake, person A.
Okay, we're looking at Gordon Hayward. He's got braces there, right? Does he have braces?
No, I think
he
it's a mouth
had
guard.
braces in high school.
Yes.
So he looks like at Butler. That's what year? Freshman year Butler?
That would have been sophomore year.
Sophomore year Butler, okay?
And Gordon Hayward with the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It literally isn't. Now, the hair is just immaculate. Like, he has
impeccable.
Perfect hair.
It's impeccable.
I want to have him on the show, not to talk to him about his career, but rather to ask him simply about his hair. Literally perfect hair. Did you watch Team USA yesterday, Jimmy?
Did watch a little bit of Team USA. Yes, caught primarily the women's soccer with a nice win over Australia yesterday. That was a little bit of swimming as well. Katie Ledecky once again winning the 1500, winning gold there, but didn't watch as much as I would have liked to. Mm-hmm. What about you guys? Did you consume any Olympic, be it primetime or perhaps just after the show yesterday?
I watched some of the basketball live. I saw Halliburton hit, 2 threes, right? I think he played 8 minutes total.
Yep.
I thought against South Sudan, they were obviously they played at a higher level than they did in the pre-Olympic game they had against them. The intensity level was very high. Jason Tatum did get minutes, but not significant minutes. But I guess that controversy can finally be put to bed.
Started,
right?
Got the start.
Yeah,
that was pretty clear to put the controversy to bed out of the gate. Though it just shifted to Joel Embiid. That's where the national media went with it because Embiid really didn't play it all yesterday.
Yeah, I was wondering if Embiid. What's interesting about the Olympic box scores is it does not list DNP-CD. So in other words, if you didn't play, you're not in the box score. At least the one that I saw. And so I looked at it and I'm like, wait a minute, with Embiid, you always think this. My initial reaction was Embiid hurt and that's why he didn't play because he wasn't playing when I saw him, but then I looked in the box score later and did not see him there. But I realized that I think he just didn't play, right? I mean, there's been a lot of conversation about that.
Correct. Steve Kerr said that he wanted to go with a more guard-oriented lineup to speed up South Sudan.
Makes sense.
That did not fit Joel Embiid. And he said that Embiid would be starting in their next game.
That makes sense, too. I mean, that's the beauty of having the greatest basketball players on earth on one team, and some of them have clearly defined different roles or different things they do well. You can look at a matchup with perhaps a speedy team like South Sudan and say, okay, no Joel Embiid here. We need to be faster and quicker, and it'll work for your advantage. Or you can get a matchup where you have another big to worry about like they did against Serbia with Nikola Jokic, or if they end up playing France, Victor Wembanyama. It helps when you have just an illustrious bench of talent that you can turn to or plug and play at a moment's notice. But yeah, I mean, it was good to see Tyrese Halliburton back out there. Jake, this feels odd to say, but let's say Tyrese Halliburton's career continues to ascend the way that it can. And I don't know that he'll ever be at a point where he'll be the true focal figure of Team USA, but this feels like just a early mile marker for him in his Olympic career. Like, he's not going to be clearly on this team the guy, but he's going to learn, soak it up more on the international stage, and get his number called in situational minutes. But maybe we're looking at it differently in 4 years in LA, where he is actually a high minutes recipient for Team USA versus a representative of the country, if that makes sense.
Right. That's fair. I thought yesterday, I didn't see this live. I mean, I watched the Team USA was my main focus yesterday, right? In terms of the Olympics. I had some stuff going on last night. I was completely enthralled by Katie Ledecky, not in the pool, but video that I saw of her swimming with a glass of chocolate milk on her head.
Oh, you've seen that now? It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, the balance that goes in that.
Is that a dare that happens, by the way? To just say, hey, I bet you can't swim the length of the pool with chocolate milk? Or is it just a idea that pops into the head?
No, quite frankly, I think it might have been an exercise. It may have been an intentional exercise to show, like, to force you to know the balance of your body as you swim. I don't know.
I can see that, yeah.
I was really hesitant to bring this up because I don't necessarily want to open the can of worms, because I think that people tune into sports talk radio, people listen to radio programs about sports, people watch sports on television as an escape, quite frankly. And I think more often than not, when they do so, especially in today's polarized world that gets where that is more of a cyclone every day, people don't want to hear about or talk about the politics of sports and politics and how they bleed into sports, and I understand that. Totally understand it. So it's not necessarily my intention to opine on what I think is the solution, because I will be honest about this. It is my job to have opinions and viewpoints on the world of sports. It's my job to find out or perceive what I think is happening with why the Colts win or lose a certain game, or why a certain player is or is not playing well, or is not playing. People tune in to this program, I think, to hear those things, or sports talk in general, to hear the dialogue and discussion like you're sitting at a sports bar of having the chat about sports. And when you start bringing things that are divisive into the equation, you do nothing other than essentially drive people away. And I totally understand that. I also think at times, even though one would assume or expect that the reason that we all have the jobs that we do is because we have the ability to opine, and we have a thought process maybe sometimes that presents a different viewpoint that allows people to go, I'd never thought of that, but I'm glad that angle's out there, because let me analyze that. That's always the goal. Sometimes I do think, and I don't pull this card out of the Uno deck very often, but sometimes I think it's okay to simply be transparent and say to people, I don't know. I don't know the answer. And maybe that disappoints people, and maybe that's letting people down. But several people have asked me via social media, and I know it is, and this is going to be an increased topic of debate, discussion, fervor, talking points, some of which into areas that have far more precipitation within the cyclone than our small umbrella is capable of protecting people from. But the story yesterday in the Olympics of the Algerian boxer who is transgendered, at least by verbally, as identifying as a woman, that was in the women's boxing Olympic Games, and the fighter that dropped out of the transgender fighter is from Algeria and went against an opponent, I think Thailand, I can't remember the other country, but either way, there have been a lot of question marks. I understand that the International Olympic Committee has allowed for transgendered athletes, once they have reached a certain point in their gender transition, to be in the games representing a gender that is different than that under which they are biologically born. My understanding is this particular boxer has had issue in other events because of testosterone levels and other such things that are higher than the threshold to show that a transition has taken place. This is all stuff that is intricate and detailed and everything else. The only answer I can give to people is simply this, and I'm simply saying it because I think it's fair to address it, because a lot of people have asked about it, and this is all I would say. What I have to say is I don't know that any of us know. I don't know what the proper answer is. Do you eventually, if this becomes more and more commonplace, create a different category of Olympics? Do you have the men's gold, women's gold, and transgendered gold, especially if it is direct physical competition against one another? And I know most sports are exactly that, but in terms of one's physical ability wearing down the other person's physical ability, I don't know. All I know is this. I know that I am somebody who my entire life has tried to live and be around that people should have the individual liberties to do what they need to do to live their lives as a comfortable human being and to allow themselves to be happy in the way that is most comfortable for them. I support that 100% for people across the board, and I will stand up and defend verbally at any time, any way, the rights of people to do what makes them happy, to love who they want to love, to be who they want to be with. That being said, I do understand the nuances and the difficulties of once that individual pursuit starts to bleed over into denying the individual pursuits of other people in an athletic competition, it becomes a very gray area. And the only thing I can say to it, and I apologize for the fact that it's going to sound like I'm backing out, but I'm being totally honest with this. I don't know what that answer is. I think it would be irresponsible of me to dig into some great opinion on it because I don't know that I'm qualified to have an exact immediate solution, number one. Number two, because I think either side of the coin, it's going to upset or offend people when I think that I want everybody to be able to listen to and feel welcomed on this program on either side of the coin or the debate. And number three, the one thing that I know about it is this is a subject matter and a topic and a discussion that is not going to go away. The International Olympic Committee is not governed by the United States government. It's not governed by who you're going to vote for at a local or a state or a national election. It's an international group, and I think they are going to have to sit down as well. And do they say, okay, there's only certain sports where we allow this, and then are you starting to – it is a very, very, very gray area that at times becomes an even darker one in that cyclone. And to quote Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that. I appreciate, I respect, and I value, and I take it as a compliment that people have reached out to me to ask me to opine on it. And I just feel, Jimmy, that it's in the best interest of the people that listen to this show for me to be completely candid to say, I've let you down because I don't have a definitive answer. And that's not a cop-out, that's transparency.
I feel like we always say to educate and entertain is our goal, but being transparent, I think, should also be at the forefront of all of that as well. So I can appreciate that as much as the listener can.
And so, you know, it's that, right? I mean, but it's a situation that at this point it hasn't hit home per se. And I know people can talk about like in the swimming stuff, but at this level, they are non-American athletes, but this is a storyline that is only going to grow in fervor, and it's only going to get and I would say my fear is that it's now going to be the talking point and the dominant story of the Olympics, because that would take away from the great accomplishments elsewhere of athletes all around the world in different sports. But it is the reality is in 2024, it's a talking point that is probably not going to go away, right? That's just the reality. But back to Team USA. We'll get into that on the other side, including Tyrese Halliburton and the way that he played yesterday in the limited minutes that he did. Is he in fact, like now, does it almost feel like that he rode this hot wave in the in-season tournament to get this invite, and now all of a sudden there's a message being sent, or is it simply the defensive aspect? Is this hurting, helping, or not in any way, shape, or form impacting the Tyrese Halliburton stance within the NBA, the fact that he clearly is the guy that's kind of relegated in the minutes? And, Eddie, we have tickets to give away for a number of things today, correct?
We have lots of tickets to give away, Jake.
Lots of tickets.
Lots
Okay.
of tickets. By my count, we have 12 in total.
12 tickets.
So we've got
To how many different events, if I may ask?
3 Dog Night. We'll have 2 pairs to give away. And then to the Indiana State Fair, we will have 2 4-packs to give away of tickets. 3 Dog Night, that concert is tomorrow night at the Indiana State Fair at 7:30. And then I believe the Indiana State Fair tickets are good for any day that you wish to go.
All right, so which one are we giving away first, and when are we doing so?
Bottom of the hour, we will give away the 3 Dog Night tickets. And I think we have a
You
unique
talking
way
about
of
the
doing
bottom
that.
of the hour right now?
Oh, sorry. Bottom of the hour, I meant like at the end of the hour.
That'd be the top of the hour. See,
That's
if
a
you look
very
at the
gr-
clock,
Yeah,
Eddie,
I know,
this
I
is
know.
weird. If you look at
Yes,
the clock,
yes,
when that
yes,
hand goes around to
yes,
the top, that's
yes,
the top of the hour.
Yes.
So
yes.
at 1 o'clock, we're giving away tickets. Is that what we're getting at?
Before 1 o'clock, but yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll do it in about 28 minutes. How's that?
Sounds good.
All right, glad we figured that out. Never heard this version of Hey Jude. Does that make me unique here?
I haven't either, but the more I listen to it, the more it does sound like the Beatles. It sounds like a different version. You know how like sometimes artists will do that like acoustic version of a song, and it's like This was a rock ballad, man. I don't understand. Why are we switching to the acoustic guitar? It's kind of the vibe I got with that one. Anyway, Hey Jude.
So is Hey Jude your vote?
That's what I
Twitter
voted on.
poll that I did yesterday, of the songs that I listed, which is the best Beatles song?
I admire you for picking 4 because I know you were limited based on the rules of Twitter and also because you could have listed 15. But with what you chose, which I thought was a good collection, I went with, it was down to Let It Be and Hey Jude, and ultimately there's more upbeat nature as Hey Jude goes along that it leaned as a favorite for me.
Hey Jude, A Day in the Life, Let It Be, and Yesterday. Which of those 4 Beatles songs, yes, there's like 1,000 of them, which of those 4 Beatles songs do you consider the best? That's the Twitter question.
Did you vote?
It's my survey. I can't.
Sure you can. Your vote counts.
I do have one that I would, but I can't give it because then that.
Okay,
that
wait till the poll
leads-
closes. Wait till the poll
That's right.
closes and then share, I guess.
Jake, touchy subject. Hate to get fired if you give your opinion. Again, I can assure you of this. I have never once been told in any way, shape, or form any handcuff at all about giving my opinion. My opinion, and then I'll just leave it be. My opinion, again, is this. My opinion is that I am the first to admit that it is such a complicated issue that I don't know what the answer is. For some reason, people seem to get lost in what I was saying. When it comes to a competition that pits one person's physical direct ability against another, in particular when the second person's physical abilities can be impacted by the physical strength of the opponent, then yes, I think when you have a biologically born male and a biologically born female competing against one another, that seems to be very askewed. And there are, as I understand it, according to the International Olympic Committee, guidelines that they determine that qualify one to compete as a transgendered individual once they have met a certain threshold of biological change that has taken place within them. And my understanding is this boxer did not meet that. I could be wrong in that. Again, my opinion is this. My opinion is that sometimes I am the first to admit that I might have an opinion, but it doesn't mean I have an answer or a solution. And the only thing I know is that an answer or a solution for the International Olympic Committee is going to be a very complicated one, and this is a storyline that is not going to go anywhere and has the potential to be the biggest talking point of the Olympic Games, which is a shame for the other athletes in other sports that are competing and representing their country and winning or doing whatever it might be. And it's easy to sit here and jump up and down and say, this is a problem. I don't disagree. This is a major, major story that's going to be taking place. I am here to tell you that I don't know what exactly the answer is. And if you want to say that, well, Jake, the answer is you just tell these people they can't compete. Like I said, the International Olympic Committee has already ruled on that. So that's our. Do you go back and reverse it? Okay, sure. It's a complicated storyline, but I know this. And then I already said this once, but I'm going to say it again. I do know this. And I'm looking at the camera when I say this, right? I never look at this camera. I understand and I respect the passion with which people have regarding this subject matter. And I understand and respect that it also carries over into the liberties that people have within trying to live individually as people that make them happy within this world. I understand those things, and I understand how what somebody does in their own private life should be their own liberty so long as it is not as restricting the happiness of someone else. And when you start talking about competing against and things like that, then you start to wage into that infringement. I understand those things, and I'm here to tell you that there's a reason why other people then have to determine what the solution is, because as I go through it, I don't know an exact solution except for to know this. Whatever solution is out there, it is one that is probably going to upset part of the apple cart. And my job on this radio show is to make sure that everybody feels that they can enjoy it without getting into nuances that are slippery and get away from what we most enjoy about sports. And that's why I brought it up, but I don't want to dwell on it. And so be it. If you have a problem with it, feel free to let my boss know that you want to hear more politics on the program, and you guys can take that up. Now, as for the Team USA, Tyrese Halliburton, I love his his attitude. I mean, this one of the things about Halliburton. When Halliburton came to the Indiana Pacers, Jimmy, the two things that we heard. Number one was his style of play and his ability to let players play above the rim was going to get other players to want to come play for the Pacers and with him. And then the other thing was that he had this like personality that was radiant and exuberant and welcoming, and that he just made everybody's day better all the time. The first of those two things maybe isn't necessarily having the effect with Team USA that you were hoping, where people were going to watch him play and go, I want to go play for the Indiana Pacers because this guy's making Embiid better and Anthony Davis better and Anthony Edwards better. But I do think that the overall enthusiasm and the joy of life that he is exuding is represented on Team USA. He is carrying that aspect of it.
Yeah, the elements of him being a great teammate and being a face of the NBA. I mean, you might think that's too extreme, but he's utilized in promotional videos now. He's utilized in billboards, in commercials, alongside other great stars within the NBA. We've talked about it. He definitively belongs on this team, but there is a clear pecking order. There just is. And the worst thing that could come from that, if you were on the bottom half of said pecking order, is to be complaining to the media or look bad body language-esque or look sad and depressed on the bench. Like he's clearly having a great time, as I think many would in his role, getting the opportunity to represent your country. Being in Paris isn't a bad gig. Jake, we've both been there. It's a pretty nice place. Like I'd be cool with being able to be there for a week or so and just play basketball in front of thousands of fans globally and millions around the world. Yes, there's a clear hierarchy with what this team asks and what Steve Kerr wants. Some days it's going to be defensive-heavy lineups, and that's not the mold that he currently fits in a way that's better than people in front of him. But there are going to be situations where 5 to 7 minutes, I think we talked with Scott Agnes a week or two ago, if that was going to be the area of playing time for Halliburton, that's probably about right. Because if you want to force him into more opportunity, you're having to take minutes away from LeBron or Steph or Devin Booker or Drew Holiday or Derek White. Like, you're having to make tough choices with players that clearly fit the play style and what's being asked of Team USA a little bit better than Tyrese Halliburton does. That said, he has been nothing short of graceful and an incredible ambassador for the Pacers, being represented once again on Team USA. He is shining in the opportunities that he is getting. And Jake, if they keep playing like this, regardless of what role he fully had in it, he is going to add the first of, you would hope, many real-world trophies into his case, that and an Olympic gold medal, which is something not many people can say.
If he could bring home, let's say that Tyrese Halliburton gets the fewest minutes of anybody on Team USA. Okay?
All right.
They win the gold. They're up there. They're celebrating. Halliburton's got the big grin, but he played a grand total. He averaged 6 minutes a game. And they say, they pull him aside. And they say, Tyrese, we had a meeting with Steve Kerr. He feels really bad. He kind of overlooked your minutes. He kind of spaced out a little bit. He called himself an idiot with Tatum, but he feels bad.
Felt like he was a moron with you. He was an idiot with Tatum, but he felt
right.
really bad.
That's right. He feels terrible. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the following. We are going to allow you, Tyrese Halliburton, since you just signed a contract with the Indiana Pacers that's going to pay you for, what is he locked in for? Is it 4 more years? 5 more years?
I think it's 4.
We'll say 4. We'll say 4.
Maybe 4 and a player option.
You get to pick any player on the Team USA roster to bring back to Indiana right now as an Indiana Pacer. Now, I'm not talking about the one that's going to sell the most seats. I'm not talking about the one that is going to create the most buzz of, the Carmel Pups kids are all going to be lined up with their jerseys waiting to try to get a free pair of shoes. I'm talking about the one that right now at this age, moving forward for the next 4 years. I mean, LeBron James is tremendous, right? 4 years from now, he's going to be 43 years old. What player on this Team USA roster most fits the void that
This
would
is
put
easy.
Indiana over the top.
This is
Eddie
easy
Garrison
for me.
just lit up like he just ate the entire
Eddie can
bag
go
of
first,
watermelon
but I
gum.
would assume we both have the same answer. This is a great question, Jake, because I mean, this is the time of year that we're in, but it's a fascinating discussion. It's an easy answer for me. Eddie, you go ahead, though.
Is it?
Yeah.
Bam Adebayo.
Wow. Okay, never mind. We're on different planes. Go ahead. You can elaborate if you'd like.
I think the defensive versatility that Bam brings is something that Miles struggles with. I think Miles struggles when it gets to outside the lane in terms of defending, and Bam can stay in front of point guards and shooting guards and whatnot. And we've seen the connection between him and Tyrese and Team USA be really good, and he's improving as a three-point shooter. He's arguably one of the best defenders, and he's I believe this was Udonis Haslem said this, that he is a forward, but he's got all the skills of a point guard. He's just stuck in a big body. And if you can move Tyrese Halliburton off the ball a little bit, add another guy who can pass, distribute, I think it would make the Pacers offense that much better.
Okay. Jimmy?
If you could hijack one of these players on Team USA and set them up for this long extended championship window.
Now, again, hold on. I want to re-clarify.
All right.
This is to add them to the current roster and the current players that are on the roster. And so therefore, if you pick somebody that is a really good player but plays the same position as a Pacer really good player, you're simply moving up and upgraded that position. I'm talking about the player that most represents any void. If you look at the Pacers roster and you look at it and you say they are this piece away, this is the guy that is the perfect jigsaw puzzle for them. Go ahead.
I want a do-it-all elite shooting guard that can create his own shot, that can be dominant, and that is a dog defensively. If you put Anthony Edwards on this Pacers team, they win a title next year. That's the only move you have to make. You already have Miles Turner there for size and defense. They're very comfortable with what they have in terms of that down-low presence. They have good three-point shooting. You could replace Anthony Edwards with whether it's Benedict Mathurin or it's Aaron Nesmith or Andrew Nembhard. You plug in Anthony Edwards into that starting five, they win a title next year.
Okay. I mean, it's hard to argue him because he's 22, but I think that.
And I'm playing the longevity game as well. Like, you could say LeBron, and maybe you'd have a strong take on that, or Kevin Durant, but he's 22 years old. He would fit perfectly along this core, and it removes the Benedict Mathurin question. Like, what I would want Benedict Mathurin to be is a version of Anthony Edwards. Not exactly Anthony Edwards, but a version of Anthony Edwards, that same type of skill set and play style. I don't know if he'll ever get there. That question is off the board now if you had a guy like Ant-Man on the team.
I don't know if you'd fit within their offensive flow.
I would agree with Eddie. I think he's a tremendous player. I think the way that Indiana team is, I think Anthony Edwards would create the most diversion of what you already have in play. He would create the unbelievable player. I mean, obviously, that goes without saying. That said, if you bring him in here, I think he causes the most construction and deviation of what is already in place, as opposed to if what I'm saying, a player that
you're saying he can't play fast, it would be a ball killer. You're saying he wouldn't move the ball at the rate.
He's a ball dominant player
for
sure, right?
There's no
by
doubt.
his own admission.
Yeah.
My point being, I'm talking about a player that you're cruising along, okay, and you've got to do you've got to make you're driving along in the car, in the golf cart, and somebody's got to hop on and somebody's got to hop off, and you can't let the golf cart come to a stop. The one that allows you to just blend in without having to come to a complete stop, and you're just continuing movement. I tend to agree with Bam Adebayo because I think his flexibility and versatility, and because of the fact that you don't know the situation with Miles Turner.
So you're removing Miles in that case, then?
No, you have Miles for.
I thought you were saying if you picked a player that
I
had
said
to
over the
them.
next 4 years, the way that everything's set up in terms of their contract, Miles Turner's deal's up when?
Next year.
Okay, so Bam Adebayo allows you to continue on with that, and if you cannot retain Miles Turner, then you have flexibility there.
Is this season starting move? Would that mean that Bam is on the team 24-25?
This upcoming season.
Is Miles off of the team, or are they together?
No, you're just adding this player to the roster.
Okay,
correct.
All right, that's all that's happening.
You're adding it.
So you don't have to kick somebody, you don't have to cut somebody. You're just adding. Okay.
Correct. But like I said, minutes-wise, there would be maybe a restriction. Tatum comes to mind.
Yep.
I don't know about his defense necessarily. And then the other one, and the age would worry me on this one, but Anthony Davis is the other one that I like because of the fact of his ability to defend, clean the glass, and he is clearly an elite level scorer in multiple areas. But
I think that the way that you guys are, and there's no wrong answer here because you're adding an elite talent to an already really good roster. The stylistic concept that you guys both went with, at least initially, is bigs. And I think Miles already does what you want substantially. Maybe you get an upgrade defensively, maybe a little bit of an upgrade offensively. But if you had a guy like, I'll give you Tatum because of what he just did last year, or a guy like Anthony Edwards, you are getting an upgrade at a position that you could argue would definitely be beneficial to this roster. I know Neesmith's a good player. I know Nembhard is a good player. They're not in the same breath as Anthony Edwards or Jason Tatum.
Tatum was my second.
Yeah. I think that Miles is enough.
Hey,
I
I'll
don't
tell
need
you
an
what,
upgrade at that
if
position.
not for the age, what about Drew Holiday?
It would be an upgrade, yeah.
Because he's an elite defender.
Correct.
And I just think at times when you get elite defenders, it becomes contagious. And it has. Look at what he did. I mean, he clearly was a big difference in Boston. I mean, you know, he there's just something about the way that he plays that I think becomes infectious across the board.
There would be moments with Anthony Edwards where, yes, your offense would have to adapt to him being, hey, it's his turn, get out of the way, let him go get a bucket.
He's an unbelievable player.
But
there's no question.
But I would argue that he has the level of stamina required. He certainly has the defensive effort level as an elite defender in this league required, to the point that if all you're asking him is to make an extra pass or two, I don't think they would lose a step in terms of their volume scoring offensively. I think they would still be a top 5 team scoring in the league, and I think they would be better defensively. It is a fair criticism, though, to say, that's the fear with Mathurin, Jake. Like that's the fear with Benedict Mathurin right now is he too ball dominant?
And we still don't really know who he is at max with this group. Okay, now, Eddie, do we have the breaking news sounder? This is the beauty of live radio. So my understanding is 3 dog night. They got a sick dog. So they're just 2 dog night. And as a result of that, they called up their friends and things got murky with the forecast. And they said, well, now things are foggy. So they went with Foghat. So Foghat is in for 3 dog night for tomorrow night at the State Fair. We had tickets to give away for 3 dog night. Do we know if those are just automatically now for Foghat?
I do not fully know. I would assume so.
We are giving away Foghat tickets now, by the way. So it's Foghat tickets that we're giving away, not 3 dog night. So if you like 3 dog night, guess what? You're seeing Foghat. And if you like Foghat, guess what? Even better, you're seeing Foghat. So those are the tickets we're giving away, right?
That would be correct.
And we're doing that when?
Next.
Okay. understanding is 3-Dog Night, little under the weather. They're headed to that vet up in Fishers, and everything's going to be okay. But as a result, out of the precaution, Foghat now, who you hear right there, that's who's going to be playing for the Indiana State Fair. Those are the tickets we have to give away. Eddie, we will do that in what fashion?
Somebody calling in?
We're just taking a caller number, and that caller is going to be on their way. Is that how we're doing it?
Sure.
All right, we'll do it that way. And Tony East joins us next. You're listening to Query and Company here on The Fan. This song, by the way, Paul McCartney has probably at all times told the story of the fact that his mother passed away. I believe Paul McCartney was either a teen or a young adult when his mother passed. And one night he had a dream where his mother, he was upset about something, going through a tough time. And in his dream, he saw his mom, whose name was Mary, who said, "You just have to let it go and let it be." And then he said he woke up from that night, sat down, and immediately wrote that song, "Let It Be," which is one of the 4 in our today's poll of the day. Best song of the Beatles. Well, not best. Of the 4 that I picked. I mean, it's impossible to pick 40, let alone 4 songs for the Beatles. But nonetheless, that is on the X Twitter right now on my Twitter account at Jake Query, JakeQuery. Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line, I will bring him into the conversation that we were just having. Tony East joins us with, of course, the Locked On podcast that he had me on the other day. My cat made a cameo in that. My apologies to Tony for that. But, Tony, I was just asking this question. If Tyrese Halliburton was able to bring home one Team USA member to add to the Pacers roster that would most fill a void for Indiana, the player that most represents the missing piece for the Pacers roster as it's set right now, in terms of their game and the way that they play, that player would be who?
First of all, I was awake last night when you posted said poll, and I voted for Hey Jude among the four that you provided. And for the actual question you're asking me, I think the answer's got to be Bam Adebayo. He has been, one, a very good player for this Team USA group, clearly in line for a very big season with Miami. And if he's actually adding some range with the jumper, the way he would up the Pacers level on both ends is a big who can do anything at the 3 and the 4, so it would pair well with Siakam or Turner or alone. Shoot it a little bit, is a very good offensive player at several different ranges, and the way he's fit with Tyrese, even in these games, has just been remarkable. I know there's a lot of good arguments to be made about, a 2-3 and how they fit on the Pacers, but, as you dream up what the best players around Tyrese Haliburton are, it's defenders with size who can, do stuff on offense, and I think Bam has proven in these games that he is the best one of those players, that he's fit very well with him so far, so obviously LeBron, KD, those guys are amazing and would fit anywhere, including Indiana. But in terms of best fit with the Pacers and bringing them back, Bam would be my answer.
So, Tony, I went the other way with this. I am assuming that you would have Miles Turner in full health and full status this year. I'm fine with where they are down low in that regard at power forward, at center. I think that that's an established area where they have a strength, and you don't need another point guard type specifically because you have Tyrese Haliburton there. Doesn't mean you can't have Doesn't mean you can't have another ball-dominant player. That's why I went with Anthony Edwards. He's 22 years old. He is an all-elite defender and offensive scorer. He has the stamina to be able to keep pace with what a Pacers offense would be. The main pushback that I got from Jake and Eddie was, would he be at times so ball-dominant that it would ruin flow of the offense? I would argue, A, that's a chance you would take, but B, if all you're asking him is in certain situations to pass a little bit more, I think he'd adapt to that. But yes, there's going to be plays where he needs the ball. He's going to go be your hero. How off base am I thinking that he would be the best choice from Team USA? And would you see him as a fit, even if he's second to Bam?
Hey, congrats on being the first person who thinks they can convince Ant to be that passing player.
I didn't say it has to fully change the game, just an extra pass or two. That's all I'm saying.
No one else has tried this yet, so that would be good. I love Ant. Like, I think he, as the face of a franchise for Minnesota, is awesome. His fit between Siakam and Haliburton would be kind of funky and clunky. Like, someone has to be reduced to a role that is a little obscure for their skill set among that trio. To me, if that is the case, Ant is amazing. So, of course, you take him as any team, and him and Tyrese are clearly building some sort of friendship between the World Cup last year and this. But I think I side with Jake and Eddie here in that it would be a little tougher to work out perfectly, even though he's a wonderful player. Like, you've already seen in these kind of exhibitions that Ant at his best is like the best scorer with the second unit, but there are times when the way he doesn't move the ball that much and kind of fits in with that offense that he hasn't been the best fit with that group. Those groups have been headlined by the defense in the front court and Derek White and Drew Holiday just terrorizing people in the backcourt. So don't get me wrong, he's wonderful and would fit with anybody. And if they didn't have Siakam, he might be my answer, but I think I want to get some size.
Tony, in terms of Tony East is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Roster essentially set. I mean, it's now, barring some sort of a shocking surprise or move, we have a pretty good idea of what we're looking at for the Pacers coming off of an Eastern Conference Finals appearance at the end of last season, or most recently, simply to say a couple of months ago. Just your overall assessment of where they are, and were there stones left unturned?
Yeah, it was an interesting offseason because I even asked Chad Buchanan about this at the X interviews. Like, running it back just made so much sense. When you're a young team who had the success that they had, you always think, okay, we don't even have to add talent to get better. Like, half their team last year was on their first or rookie scale contract still. Even more than that, I believe, if you just look at their playoff rotation, right? And then that doesn't even account for guys who weren't playing like Mathurin and Jarris Walker. So there's so many obvious paths to being better that a team like that fit really well and had great camaraderie and had a ton of success in the postseason, like, that's what matters for winning. Like, if you have a great regular season and lose in the playoffs, you have to think about changes more than the inverse. So them and even Minnesota, who's young and had a run like that, like, those are the kind of teams you run back and try to figure it out. And guess what? Both of those teams did it. So it's kind of how I thought this would go. And, running it back has kind of taken on this weird connotation among fans of sport teams that it sounds bad, and sometimes it is, but I think this is the kind of team you do it for. And then if things don't work out as well this year with, some guys getting paid or getting older, then you reassess what you need and how it goes. But I kind of thought that's what they would do. In terms of stones left unturned, though, they didn't have a ton of wiggle room. It was kind of a decision of, Siakam was going to stay to me, right? Like, he was their second best player last season. It was awesome in the playoffs. But if it was use that mid-level exception or keep Obi Toppin, I suppose that maybe they could have tried to get a defensive forward with that spot instead of Obi. But Obi fits so well that it's hard to even know who would have taken their money for the role they could have offered. And it's hard to say what a stone left unturned would be. Maybe there was some massive trade out there, but all the stars who got traded don't really fit the Pacers and what they need right now. So it's hard to say that there's any obvious stone left unturned outside of like a Caleb Martin or somewhat kind of defensive forward type. But again, Obi fits so well that it's hard to even say that. But call me in February and ask that same question. If they're sitting in sixth and don't look like they've taken significant progress, then there'll have to be more of a discussion about what they did.
We'll try again. Tony East is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He covers the Pacers for Sports Illustrated. Tony, I have a Pacers serious question, but it was brought up to me via text, so I now need to ask this question. And I want to say on the front end that you sound laser focused during this conversation. You've had no lulls in your ability to deliver great Pacers content like any other interview. And maybe it's just the connection of the phone right now, but are you by chance partaking in any Rocket League as we speak?
Okay.
I am not, actually.
Okay. The way that it's probably just the phone connection. It had the air marks of the sticks, so that's why I asked.
I have done that before, but I am currently not doing that.
Okay. All right. I appreciate the transparency and honesty there. You can follow Tony on Twitter at Tony R. East. And I wouldn't have cared either way, by the way, because like I said, you've had no lulls in the answers. But you tweeted or quote tweeted last night, Adrian Wojnarowski reporting that Cleveland Cavaliers center Jared Allen has agreed on a 3-year, $91 million maximum extension, guarantees him $131 million over the next 5 years. You highlighted the likes of Lopez and Claxton and Hartenstein, Porzingis, all at that same center-like position that Miles Turner occupies, setting markets for that position. Miles Turner, as it stands right now, last year of a contract and equates to, I know that all these sites aren't perfect, but about 15% of the current Pacers cap, if I'm not mistaken on that. You have better references there, so maybe I'm off. There has to be a number, or does there, that's too big in terms of if Miles wants to be a record-setting type of signing or a market-setting contract signing next offseason. There has to be a limit on that for the Pacers. Does there not? Or is the fear of, where bird rights are positioned and everything else that, no, you can't lose a talent like him. You fit whatever the bill is.
Yeah, it's going to be fun for me as a cap dork, not as fun for the Pacers or Miles Turner. A fun back and forth, right? Like playoff caliber starting centers, right? That's a clear distinction because if you're not playoff caliber like Jonas Valanciunas, you get nothing. Basically, I've gotten about 25 to 30 million these last 2 years between all those guys that you already said, and now Jared Allen, who has a former All-Star appearance, as does Porzingis. Sorry, I blanked on the name there. They got the top end of that at about 30 million, and then the Claxton Lopez group was a little closer to 25. So where does Turner fall on that kind of scale of player, right? And that's going to matter in terms of the Pacers negotiation side because they're going to have luxury tax issues is the wrong word maybe, but concerns next season, figuring out how to fit everybody that they have into their team already. So they can kind of easily go into negotiations and say, hey, we have a top number that we cannot exceed for, team building reasons, unless they're willing to pay the tax, and then they could go over it. But Miles Turner could also say, hey, I've seen these guys that are, are my quality of player and are playoff contributors get about this much, and the cap just went up 10%. I want that. And if you remember back when he signed that renegotiation and extension back in 2022, early that year, Kevin Pritchard said, like, the length of the deal added 2 years, that there was this barrier of next off season for some players when they were signing contracts because of the way the new TV deal is going to make it so the cap goes up so much, right? And so that could work in Turner's favor in that, if the Pacers have this wiggle room, maybe they have to use it on him, and he could say, hey, I want actually 10% more than what the market was set at last year, and the Pacers could say, well, we don't have the budget for that. Go, if you can get that offer somewhere else, maybe that works out. And so I think they would like to keep him. He's very good. Pascal Siakam talked about a of course, that, hey, Miles Turner's like my dream front court partner, like when the trade happened during the season. So all that makes me think that they have a lot of reasons to come to a resolution, but the market dynamics are forming in such a way that it might be a little tricky. And, if you look at next year's, like Washington Wizards will have cap space and maybe need a center, or who knows what the Rockets do with Şengün, or, there's a couple teams that could need centers next year that might actually have cap space. Brooklyn would ironically be a good fit if they didn't have Nick Claxton. So it could go a lot of different ways. I currently think the market probably works in Turner's favor, but if he wants to stay with Indiana, it kind of works against him. We'll see how that shakes out. But Jared Allen, another center set in the market for guaranteed to be free agent Miles Turner next year.
Now, given your cap nerdiness, and I say that with high-level admiration as a nerd myself, just not in the cap world of things, paying him the third highest salary on the team and it being $30 million, let's just say it's 30 a year, right? That's about what Allen's was. Let's say it's $30 million a year for Miles Turner going into age 28, 29 season at the time next year. I think that's too much money. Based on where the cap is gone, based on as you've studied it, do you agree with that?
I want to know why you think that before I answer.
I think that so much of what the Pacers can be next season and beyond hinges on the development of Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker. I know that doesn't answer your question on Turner. I'm going to get to that in a second, but that's where I view them currently right now. And if I worry that we might have seen the peak of this iteration of the Pacers last year. I hope I'm wrong on that, but I worry the peak might be conference final appearance again. And hey, you would take that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if I'm right on that, and it's clear that they need to make a slight adjustment or a slight change, where does the financial flexibility come in? I'm not comfortable with moving on from Siakam. Halliburton's the face of your franchise. There's going to be other bills due coming in the couple years after that. I think he would be the easiest one to move on from, even though there's not a clear definition for a replacement for him. There's not. There's nobody on the roster right now for the Pacers that would be able to fill the void of Miles Turner if he left Indiana tomorrow. But I think you have to draw the line from a financial standpoint somewhere for the sake of what if we're capped and what if this is as far as we can go? And he just happens to be the last mouth at the table to the point that $30 million is too much for me. Does that make sense? And whether it does or does not, am I crazy to say that should be the line? About $30 million a year should be the line for him.
Well, I think that the reason that it's hard to talk it like that is because they can't just replace him, right? They don't just get $30 million to spend on someone else. So maybe you just do it and figure out how you financially can become what you would consider viable later. The Mathurin and Walker contracts aren't due for a couple of years if those guys are even worth paying. And I think that if you're a team trying to win, you think about maybe making your financial move with a younger player instead and keeping your established talent. Like we saw the resurgence of, two-way centers to me in this postseason, especially lob threat kind of guys. And so they're so important. Like Lively was so good for the Mavs and Porzingis, obviously, and Turner was quite good until he got hurt in the conference finals. And, Kat and Gobert and Jokic is amazing. Like every team that did well has good size at the 5. It's an important position, again, with the death of the Warriors small ball just terrorizing everybody, right? So I think it matters a lot to get that position right. And $30 million is probably, I think, what I would cap it at myself, certainly. Like in my head, and the other thing I wonder is, and this was partially to get his last 2 years of his deal to be not as high, but they put him up to the max 2 seasons ago, right? Like that was a big raise they gave him then. Does that goodwill mean anything? I would guess that maybe a little bit, but not a lot. So, can they get him for 3 for $80, 3 for $85, something like that? And if they do, though, that's it, right? They're going to have trouble keeping McConnell and Isaiah Jackson, but they need a center, right? They just don't have anybody else at all, and it's so hard to replace that salary slot that I think they would just try to keep him because they can't really get another 5 that's even close to as good as him with the resources they would have.
By the way, Tony, if you could spare me for just a second here, because, Eddie, I want you to play the breaking news sounder. This just in, noted soccer, video game, and comic book superhero enthusiast Jimmy Cook has labeled somebody else's interests as nerdy.
It's a term of endearment when I say it. When you say it, I think it's a peg down.
Tony, if you could
He
break
also
down,
introduced himself as nerdy 5 minutes prior.
if you could break down salary caps of the Marvel heroes, then we could just really put a tie on all this.
Robert Downey Jr., Dr. Doom now, pretty big, Tony, pretty big.
Come on. Hey, Tony, your thoughts on the career of Gordon Hayward?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's just there's such an obvious splitting point in his career, which is really such a bummer because he was so good with the Jazz, had that all-star season, and all of a sudden gets to finally a good team, and Kyrie Irving's there, and like, wow, this is a title contender, and it all goes away in 1 minute of play or whatever that was, and he was good after the ankle injury, but never the same, right? And the other thing that happened after that is he was never able to be healthy for full seasons, right? 50, 55 games was about what you'd expect from him, and I wonder how much the trade last year forced his career to kind of end. He was just a terrible fit with Oklahoma City after being – and he was fine in Charlotte last year. I wondered if he'd still get a shot with some team that was desperate for contributors. But, he has as many kids as he has, very family-oriented guy and, bouncing around the league like this. If he even wanted to do that, I don't know. But in terms of a career, I still wonder what he could have been without that ankle injury because he had the All-Star appearance in the past. Was clearly a very coveted player every time he was a free agent out of Utah, out of Boston, even when the Pacers had interest that year. He was clearly very talented at a very in-demand position, but just held back by injuries and such a legend here, with the Butler runs and the game winner for Brownsburg. I just saw a clip of that again today. And in my head, that shot was so much farther from the basket than it actually was, but still a hero around here, and it sucks to see it end at 34 for a guy that was still, a double-digit point-per-game scorer as recently as this year for the Hornets. But when it's your time, it's your time, and I think he was ready. And hell of a career for an Indy legend.
Yeah, when you look at the fact, first off, it's amazing to think that he is 34 years old, but 835 games. It's a lot of wear and tear, and I understand, and I totally get it when people say, oh, man, I mean, for that kind of money, I'd do anything for, to play for another year. But if you look at the amount of money that for any athlete is already stored once you start getting into the, the hundreds of millions, Tony, it would be tough, quite frankly, psychologically, even more than physically, when you look at having to recapture your body and just the discipline and everything that goes into it. Don't get me wrong. Any of us would gladly welcome the opportunity to have that level of elite athleticism and be in that kind of shape and hire a chef and all of that. I mean, I get it. But I also understand that psychologically speaking, and I would assume, and hopefully we'll hear from Gordon Hayward soon about this, but psychologically speaking, I think once you reach a certain point as an athlete that you know that you're not 100% in, if you have the means to be able to say, I'm going to walk, then more power to him. And I look at it in his case and I say, I get it, right? But heck of a career, no question about it.
Yeah, Max. You get max deals from Utah and Charlotte and Boston, and you're financially set forever. It's like if you're at this point where, and I'm making up the teams, I have no idea what interest he even had at an NBA level this offseason, but it's like, man, I've been going through rehab 4 years in a row. This sucks. Now I got to go take the minimum to go play in, Cleveland or whatever. Do you want to do that? Milwaukee, maybe there's an awesome city. I'm just making this up, but that doesn't sound that appealing when you have the kind of, if you look at it a percentage of their wealth, they're not adding that much. Obviously it'd be life-changing money to any of us on this phone call, but for them it's a different calculus. And I understand that thinking, and especially given, again, how his, in Oklahoma City last year, how things went for him. Just such a their GM was admitting on the record, yeah, it was a terrible trade. That really hurts a little bit too, I think. And so when it's time, it's time. And again, hell of a career, one of the best to ever do it from the area, right?
Tony,
so,
if you had the money, and you were going to retire at 34, and obviously you're from Indianapolis, so let's say you build a huge house out in Brownsburg, you whatever, you get that, you're going to buy one condo or apartment in an international city, and then one condo or apartment in 2 U.S. cities not named Indianapolis. Where are you doing it?
Okay. South Haven, Michigan would be one of my U.S. ones for sure. Internationally, that's a great one. Maybe probably the Alps somewhere, and then I need somewhere warm now, so we'll go south. like Hilton Head or Myrtle Beach or something.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Hilton Head's cool. That's good.
A little quieter, but still fun, if that makes sense. It's not quiet, but it's not rustling and bustling. I think those would be my answers. That's a kind of a boring trio, though.
No, actually, going the South Haven was a little off the beaten path. I'll give you that. That's cool, right?
I want to like, I have the house in Brownsburg, but like I'm vacationing in the winter here and the summer here and skiing in between, and like, oh yeah, I have family in India. I can go pop in every so often. That'd be my plan.
Jimmy?
I would go. I like the Hilton Head answer, but I'll be different just for it. I'll go Naples.
Oh God, Jimmy, we said 34, not 64.
I know, but I get around there. It's easy being the youngest one on the block, right? And then maybe Venice internationally.
Okay, not bad. You still got one left in the U.S.
Okay, Jake, you're the only person that could answer me this without me Googling it. Where would be the furthest I could live away from New York to still be able to make it to Yankee Stadium without living in the city? Like, just have to go public transit.
Oh, I mean, right, just outside of the city, like just north of it, Terrytown.
Okay, then there you
go. Or you could just go to like East Rutherford, New Jersey.
Nah.
You can get there every day from there.
Yeah, I'll take Terrytown.
Nothing is better than East Rutherford, where you walk out and you say, "Yep, it's another beautiful day at 25th and Shadeland." Hell yeah! Look at that fleet trucking company over there by the old stadium. Tony East joining us, Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. Tony, thanks for having me on the podcast. Hopefully, it didn't, dip your regular numbers too much.
It was great, and we figured out our tech problems, which is a requirement of recording a podcast, I think, at this point.
I still don't know why my company laptop, for whatever reason, wouldn't do the camera. But then once we did it by phone and everything else, it was good, right? And if you don't mind me saying so,
yesterday I was the one with tech issues. I'm like, I hate when I have tech issues. I'm like, bro, I'm in my 20s. Like, I should know how to use stuff, but I can't. I couldn't figure it out. Drove me crazy.
Well, I will say I looked good once we figured it out. Tony, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Tony East, Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. I think internationally speaking, I mean, Barcelona would have to be my –
yeah.
I don't know, though. Australia – I mean, I haven't been there yet, but it seems like the Gold Coast. I mean, the Gold Coast in Australia be pretty nice, right?
I wouldn't say no to Paris or Lyon.
I mean,
somewhere
Paris
around
would
there.
be nice.
Somewhere south of France. I don't know. A lot of beautiful places in Europe.
No question. I don't know. There's beautiful places everywhere. That's the thing. That's
Yeah.
I was talking to one of our listeners, had a really good conversation that goes to Colombia. And apparently Colombia is beautiful.
Really?
And I think that we have the stereotype of the mid-'80s Pablo Escobar's Colombia. And I think you have to be conscientious. But like Argentina, I think there are probably beautiful areas of Buenos Aires is beautiful. Chile has beautiful parts in South America. But we are so accustomed to go travel and explore European cities because that's the culture and the history for the most part from where we came.
Yeah.
South America, to me, I really want to explore South America, and I think it'd be fabulous, and this is a terrible thing to say, but I just don't know as much or have the level of entrenched curiosity of their history because we didn't hear about it and learn about it growing up the way we did Europe's, right?
Yes. I mean, there's a natural tendency to learn as much European history as possible for the reasons you outlined because of, the fight for independence from England and
right.
So many roots like families from Ellis Island. You don't think about naturally, Jake, from the immigration process with Ellis Island, you think of people coming over from Europe to get here, which is why so many people can trace their roots back that way, whether using Ancestry.com or 23andMe or whatever. So there's a natural inclination to just focus on that part of the world.
By the way, that Ancestry.com and the 23andMe and all that.
Yeah. Have you done one of those?
I have not.
I've wanted to.
And there's no reason really for me to believe that in the closest of scopes that it would throw curveballs in my life. But mostly what I hear from stories about that are like holy cow moments, right?
Yes.
I mean, I understand the very cool nature of, hey, I'd like to know where my great grandfather or grandmother came from. I get that, but I hear so many stories about people that are like, well, something interesting happened at Thanksgiving. This guy walked in, and we're like, well, who's this? And it's like, well, Aunt Sally did one of those 23andMe's, and we didn't know this, but we've had a brother in Phoenix for years. What? Well, Dad had a trip once. Okay. I mean, that, don't you hear stories about that with
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, you hear stories like that, and I don't know how, I haven't looked at the authenticity of these, but you'll see for the big wigs of the world every now and again. I can't remember who the reporter is that does this, but I've seen it on like a 60 Minutes or a CBS This Morning, where they'll sit down with like, I don't know, we had Tony Stewart in here yesterday. They'd sit down with Tony Stewart and be like, "Oh, you actually have a descendant of George Washington." It's like, wow, I had no idea. Like they'll surprise the person they're interviewing with a nugget about their family tree they didn't know.
You know that you know what happened with Jack Nicholson with Rolling Stone, right? I think it was Rolling Stone.
Mm-mm.
Jack Nicholson, that obviously the noted actor, and I think it was in between the time when One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and The Shining came out. So right in that time where he was already a noted actor, but he wasn't near to the stratosphere that he is now. But I believe it was Rolling Stone was doing an article on his life, and in the article said, and they had already interviewed other aspects of his family. So they're talking to him, and they said, "Now, how old were you when you found out about your mother?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, your mom. I mean, your sister. How old were you?" And he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I have a sister, an older sister, and then mom and dad." Well, they had already interviewed his family, where they learned of the fact that the woman that Jack Nicholson grew up thinking was his mother, thinking was his oldest sister, was actually his mother biologically. And his grandparents were raising him, he thought were his mom and dad. They told the journalist that they had not told Nicholson. So the journalist assumed that Nicholson knew this factoid. And they're like, "Wait a minute, you're not aware of this?" And he's, "No, what are you talking about?" And they said, "Your mom and dad are your grandparents. Your quote-unquote sister is your mother who had you out of wedlock when she was like 17 years old." And he found that out via the interview. Now, that would be awkward. Right?
I would say so. That would be kind of a mind spasm.
I would think they probably should have checked on that ahead of time.
There's vetting that needs to be done. I would agree with you on that. Though, if that was a taped interview, Jake, I don't know if it was or not, but there's quite a deadpan reaction there, I would think, from Jack.
That could go viral, right? Eddie, what are we doing next? Did you say we have tickets to give away, or what are we doing?
No. We're going to Paris.
Oh, we're going to Paris?
Yes.
Oui. We can go and see the potential condo that I'm buying if I don't move and buy one in Barcelona, or Jimmy might buy, or whatever else.
David Woods 007.
David Woods, who covers the Olympics like nobody else, will join us next. not even necessarily making sure that you are stopping at Buc-ee's to fill up with fuel. Instead, you would hear this sound. Because we are actually going across the pond via the air to our friend David Woods, at David Woods 007, that would be 007, who is in Paris covering the Olympic Games. And David, there is so much to talk about in terms of these Olympics already, both from a local standpoint and even from obviously an international standpoint. But because you are boots on the ground, I'm going to begin with this, and I thank you for your time. I hope you're enjoying France, which is fantastic. What is, when you're there, what feels like every Olympic Games kind of develops its own storyline, right? The storyline for these games so far that you kind of have to be there to feel would be what?
Maybe the Leon Marchand fever. I was in the swim venue yesterday, and the roar of the crowd when he came from behind in the last 50 meters to win the 200 butterfly might be as loud of an indoor enclosed arena sound as I have ever heard. Even the swimmers are saying they can't hear anything. Underwater, above the water, and even when they're underwater, they can sense that the place is like buzzing. So it probably comes across on TV, but it's really striking.
Just out of curiosity, David, because I think that we generically think, I fall victim to this, that because the Olympics are Paris 2024, that everything is like right there in the shadows of the Eiffel Tower. But in reality, I know in other venues, it becomes very spread out over a multi-mile area, and then it becomes almost more of a region than just the host city. Is everything pretty centralized, or are you having to move throughout the areas of France?
No, this is the most spread out Olympics I've ever been to, and this is the 8th Summer Olympics I've been to, and it was a challenge in the first few days because you're reliant. Usually the media go from your hotel on a media bus to the main press center, from there to a venue, pretty easy. But here they've relied a lot on public transportation, and there's no main central Olympic plaza. For instance, the last Olympics I was at was at Rio, and I could go to the main press center. I could walk to the velodrome for cycling. I could walk to swimming. I could walk to the diving venue, which was outdoors. Had to take a bus to the track and field stadium. But there is no such hub here.
David, what can you tell us about the preparation? I know he has his semifinal, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow. I could be mixing up time zones, but one of my favorite athletes in the Olympic Games with the Indiana tie, the Cathedral tie more specifically, is Cole Hocker. What can you tell us about what you've seen from him so far as he prepares to continue his quest to medal and maybe even win gold?
Well, he's kind of in an enviable position because he's good enough to medal, he's competent enough to medal, but the pressure is not applied on him. First round of the 1,500 meters is tomorrow morning. Actually, I think it's like 5 a.m. Indianapolis time, 11 here in Paris. And and he's has a good approach. I think there's nothing given. You have to get through these rounds, and the depth of quality in the 1,500 now is so good, and the runners are running so fast. Partly because of talent, I think. Partly because of the shoe technology has really influenced the 1,500 a lot. But he does have tremendous closing speed. He's a lot stronger than he used to be because of his training for the 5,000 meters. And hey, he's 0-6 against Josh Kerr, and he's 0-6 against Jakob Ingebrigtsen, and those are the two favorites for the Olympic gold. And he was 7th in the Prefontaine Classic, which is in late May, which is kind of the same cast of characters. But Cole Hocker is he's fit and he's ready. Whether he medals or not, we'll see. But he's ready as he could be, especially for a 23-year-old.
David, I'm almost embarrassed to ask the simplicity of this question, but I find myself when I watch the Olympics. David Woods is our guest in Paris, by the way, covering the Olympics. I find myself when I watch the Olympics, this narrative in my mind that each of the athletes in swimming or track and field, those that have side-by-side competition taking place all at once, that it's the first time that they're challenging themselves against the athletes of these other countries, and that's what makes the Olympics what it is. But the reality is, in almost all of the sports, that this is just one of many competitions where they are seeing the same faces over and over. Is it correct in saying that in most of these sports, these are competitions that most of these athletes are going against with the exact same, just like you talked about, athletes many, many times over the course of a year at various competitions?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Of course, there's a world championships in track and field every year, and it's basically the same cast of characters as an Olympics, but for a variety of reasons, it's not perceived in the same way. And American culture, I think, is especially peculiar. I think if you told someone on the street that you were an Olympian, they'd be impressed. But if you told someone on the street you were a high jump world champion, they would give you a glassy stare. When in fact it would be virtually the same achievement as winning an Olympic gold medal. But that's what makes it such the ultimate reality show of the Olympic Games, because there's no wait until next year. There's wait until 4, and I think I read 76% of Olympians are in one Olympics in their life. So I mean, for most athletes here, it is literally a once in a lifetime shot.
And with that, do you find in your areas of the different Olympics that you have covered, is it perceived worldwide at the same level as it is here in the United States?
Yes, I think it is. The only other thing I think that tickled me from worldwide, I can't remember which Olympics I was at, maybe in Athens, and I somehow got a Canadian broadcasting feed, and they were complaining about this or that, or how the Canadian athletes were doing. But my experience has been, no matter what country it is, large country, small, medium, the news media at that particular country always thinks the athletes at that country should be doing better than they are.
Right.
And that's just like universal. It probably sounds like Big Ten football or basketball.
Now, let's go to David Woods is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. So let's go back, David. We'll go to the beginning of the games. For those that have not been able to follow actively, and we talked to you before the games began, and I appreciated it much so, a cursor of the local athletes that are representing Central Indiana or Indiana in the Olympics. Of those that have already competed, what storylines jumped out at you, or who have we already seen now that their time is done, and what were the results?
Well, Sarah Bacon, the very first started off the Olympics. In fact, that first day was big because I went to diving, and Sarah Bacon from Cardinal Litter High School won a silver. She could have been this could have been her third Olympics, but it was her first. She won a silver medal in synchronized diving. Then I went to the road cycling venue where I thought Chloe Dygert might even have a chance at a gold medal. Despite a crash, she recovered and won a bronze, which is pretty notable achievement. She was like 1 second from the silver. And then at night I went to the swimming venue where Chris Giuliano of Notre Dame was on the gold medal winning team in the 4x100 meter freestyle relay. And gold medals have been few and far between in the pool for the U.S. team. I think the only, in fact, I don't know if a American man will win an individual gold medal in swimming here. They might win some relays, and with the relays, Alex Shackles was Carmel 17-year-old, swam prelims tonight, and I expect the U.S. to win a medal in that, and Alex would become the first Carmel girl ever to win an Olympic swimming medal.
David, my generation has been spoiled greatly when it comes to Olympic gold that has occurred in the pool for Team USA since 1992. They've won more swimming gold medals than any of their peers in the Olympics since then, every cycle since 1992. And while this was forecasted a bit or baked into the story going into the 2024 games of Australia and other lurkers there to dethrone them, it's happened more dramatically in terms of the gold not popping across the screen when tracking swimming for Team USA. How much of this should be accepted because of the fact that, it's a very competitive sport as a whole, advancements across the board, and just internationally, it continuing to be the last couple of years, especially Team USA and Australia, a very competitive rivalry. How much of this is to be expected, and is there any level of disappointment of not as much gold to show for Team USA in the pool?
there probably is some disappointment because USA Swimming has such high standards, but really it shouldn't be. I mean, Americans are winning a ton of medals, and Pat Forty of Sports Illustrated wrote what I thought was a really fascinating story on Summer McIntosh of Canada and Leon Marchand of France are probably the best male and female swimmers in the world, and they're both training in the United States to beat the Americans, and they are. So it's kind of a maybe rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing, but it's very hard to win an Olympic medal, and swimming it gets harder all the time. I mean, Alex Shackle is probably going to swim a great final tonight, and probably finish 5th or 6th. But at age 17, you hope maybe she would have another Olympics in her. So it's hard to win a medal, and it probably if you only track golds, this would be a disappointment. But I guess that's another one of my gripes about American sports culture.
To be clear, I'm not one of those, David. I'm not sitting here saying that the silver or the gymnastics team celebrating about bronze. That's I'm not one of those people. But you're right. Culturally speaking, we are very much a gold championship or bust mentality for sure.
Yeah, and I do find that regrettable. And I'm glad you mentioned the gymnastics because their talent pool is 1/10 the size of the women's. So for them to win a team bronze medal was a really maybe even a greater achievement than a casual sports fan might realize.
David, what Indiana athletes do we still have upcoming here in these games?
Well, of course, you definitely have Cole Hocker, and then Notre Dame's Yara Nuguse is also in the 1,500 meters. Allie Wilson, who used to be a nanny in Indianapolis, is in the women's 800 meters. You got Erin Reese of Indiana State is in the women's hammer. Devin Charlton, who ran for Purdue, is a world record holder in indoor hurdles, and she's a medal contender in the hurdles. Lee Kiefer of Notre Dame has already won a gold medal in individual foil, and she's fencing here coming up for a team foil gold medal. In fact, Notre Dame has at least, I think they've won 6 medals or 5 medals already, 2 by Cristiano and 3 by the fencers. And then Chloe Dygert has some more events, too. She has the road race, and then she has the team pursuit and track cycling. So there's still a lot coming up. And, of course, I haven't even mentioned Rajiv Ram, who's playing for men's doubles gold on Saturday of Carmel.
And, David, I can't recall if you said this previously. My apologies, but I wanted to go back. I remember being at the IHSA swimming finals and at Fort Carmel, seeing Drew Kibler when he was, I think, a junior, kind of introduced himself at that time. Obviously, we know the Carmel's great program. If I'm not mistaken, he already has medaled once. Is he done now, or am I wrong in saying that he won a silver?
Yeah, he won a silver. The relay team won a silver, and he is done. I think he was even on the Today Show the next morning. I'm not watching NBC TV here in Paris, but that was I was glad. I was glad that he did that. He was very, very forthcoming at the post race news conference, and that was kind of a redemptive swim for him because he was on the team in that same relay in Tokyo. It was the first time in the history a U.S. swim relay team was off the podium. So that was pretty deflating. And they ended up getting silver. You could say, well, maybe they should have got the gold. It was quite the coincidence. The same 4 British swimmers who won 3 years ago won the gold medal in the 4x200 freestyle relay. And that was unprecedented in Olympic swimming history. There had never been 4 swimmers, the same 4, win a gold medal in back-to-back Olympics. So you could say they won silver, but they finished second to a history-making performance by the Brits.
David Woods is our guest, longtime sports reporter for the Indianapolis Star, current independent journalist over in Paris, covering as a correspondent as well over at the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He joins us. David, you mentioned a couple of different sports there. From your firsthand observations, all I can go off right is the television, but I never watched a single second of competitive fencing before, and I don't know if it's just because the French women were in the final against Italy, and you're naturally going to get a bigger pop when it's, a hometown or home country representation there. But non-big sports division, I would put fencing up there as the most electric atmosphere of Olympic sport I've watched in these games. Can you back that up in terms of what you've seen, or am I just, do I have my TV up too loud perhaps?
Well, that's what the fencers have said, and that's such a beautiful venue. I think 8,000 fans in the Grand Palais, and all the fencers are saying after what a privilege it is to be there in such a beautiful, beautiful venue, and also have the French French fans so into it. I've been in that venue, but not during competition because it's actually it shares the media center with the road cycling venue on Point Alexander III bridge. There is nearby. So yeah, that's a bit, fencing is a much bigger deal. It is in Europe than it is in the United States. But the Americans are winning a lot of fencing medals, and that is probably an obscure sport to most Americans, but it's one in which the United States performs very well internationally, and that's a fairly recent occurrence. I think that's USA Fencing has much more top of the international list than it was, say 20 years ago.
David Woods is our guest, Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. He's in Paris. He's racking up huge international bills in order to do this call. So we will wrap with this, David. I wanted to give you the opportunity. You covered Butler basketball. You have written books about Butler basketball. You were there for each step of the way when Gordon Hayward was a Bulldog. Your thoughts now on the 34-year-old calling it a career after 835 games in the NBA?
Well, he certainly had a magnificent pro career, and I'm not sure anyone could have projected coming out of college that he would achieve all that he did. I know when he did come out, I think he was drafted 9th or then Paul George 10th, I think, in the first round.
Correct.
That year. I thought, well, gosh, Gordon Hayward might wash out in 3 years, or he might become an NBA All-Star, and he was an All-Star 1 year with the Utah Jazz, and really I don't know what you could project of that, but he was still a very young player after 2 years at Butler, and I still maintain that if he'd come back the next year, I think Butler would have won the national championship, and that's water under the bridge now. But one of my favorite Gordon Hayward stories is with post-game news conference. Todd Kowalczyk, then the Green Bay coach, said Gordon Hayward was the best player the Horizon League had and would ever have. And my editor at the time got really angry at me. He said I never should have quoted the coach as saying that because it was so obviously untrue. Well, Kowalczyk was right, and it turns out my editor was completely wrong.
That's the way editors work sometimes. No, I'm just kidding. David.
That editor is no longer employed at the Indy Star. I will say that.
Well, I'm going to reserve the comment of like a lot of people from that era. David, we appreciate it. Merci beaucoup and au revoir, all right?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys.
I think I got that all right. Merci beaucoup and au revoir. I know this much, David. Appreciate it. As I told you before, bonsoir, not bonjour. After 11 a.m., it's bonsoir, not bonjour. You say bonjour, you walk in, they're like, yeah, you're American. Nice try. Eddie, did you say that we have tickets to give away now?
Yep.
And that is for which one?
I don't care, Jake. I mean, we have.
We're giving away tickets to what?
Would you like to do the State Fair, or would you like to do Foghat?
Okay, so Foghat is performing on the free stage tomorrow. We now know that and this is a VIP experience. That is because of the fact that Three Dog Night is unavailable, and so Foghat is now the show. We have tickets to give away for that and the State Fair. How about we do State Fair next?
Sounds good.
We're going to do it Price is Right style. We need two people to go head-to-head against one another. How's that?
Little showcase showdown?
Yeah, I'll explain next. All in for the tickets to the state fair at minimum 2. We're gonna do this Price is Right style. I have a challenge that I'm gonna do, Price is Right style, and we're gonna have 2 people go head to head for the right to win a pair. What do we have? A 4-pack of tickets, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we are giving away a 4-pack of tickets to the Great Indiana State Fair. We need 2 people. Can we put 2 people on the phone at the same time, Eddie?
Yes, we have 5 contestants on hold.
Okay. We will go with whatever 2 that you want to put on the air right now, Eddie.
Jimmy, you pick the numbers.
Let's go 2 and 3.
Okay. Caller number 2, this is who? Your name is what?
Matthew.
Matthew. Okay, hang on, Matthew. And then we are going to go with who on number 3. Number 3, you are on the air as well. Your name is what?
This is Justin from Shelbyville.
Justin from Shelbyville. We'll speak slowly, Justin. You been to the Cow Palace lately, Justin?
No, I have not.
Oh, man, you got to go to the Cow Palace and get yourself an ice cream sundae here. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We are doing this Price is Right style. Justin, you have seen the Price is Right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Matthew, you have seen the Price is Right. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. This is the Showcase Showdown. I'm going to present to the 2 of you, Matthew and Justin, and we will go alphabetically. So, Justin, you will have the first wager here. Matthew, you cannot Google once I give this, okay? This is literally the honesty policy. The closest without going over to this answer is going to be the one that wins the 4-pack for the tickets to the Indiana State Fair. Do we have the Price is Right music by any chance, Eddie, that we could subtly play underneath? Okay. Pat that down a little bit. All right. Justin, here's the question. I need your Showcase Showdown wagering here. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
You fired up? Everything going okay there in Shelbyville? You ready for the Golden Bears going to be good this year?
No, we're never good. We go defeated.
You ever been to Country Club Heights, Justin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We used to
Second
play
house on the
sports out
left
there
on
when I was a
Fleming.
kid.
Second house on the left on Fleming Street. The former Quarry residents pay homage to the statue out front. Okay, here we go. Justin, here is the question for you. Can you please tell me without going over the career earnings in the National Basketball Association in the career of Gordon Hayward? We're looking at millions and hundreds of thousands. So in other words, 85,385,000, whatever. Justin, off the top of your head, your guess for the career earnings of Gordon Hayward, who announced his retirement today from the NBA. Go.
Oh,
Show's over at 3.
goes $95 million. $95,245,000.
Okay. Matthew, you are up. Would you like to tell for me, Matthew, the amount that Gordon Hayward accumulated in his NBA earnings since 2010 with his announcement of retirement today?
$207 million.
$207 million for Matthew. Okay. Justin, what do you think of Matthew's guess? Did Matthew go over?
I hope so.
Justin, have you been to the Indiana State Fair?
A couple times.
Okay. And have you ever paid homage to the Quarry building down on the square in downtown Shelbyville?
Every time I go.
Yeah, tallest building in Shelbyville, by the way. And look up and you can see the Quarry. My understanding is loony uncle of mine many moons ago that was some architect and built it. Okay, here we go. The winner is, do we have a drum roll by any chance, Eddie? I don't believe that we have a drum roll here. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. Career earnings of Gordon Hayward, $272,742,175. That means that the closest without going over is Matthew with his wager of $207 million. But Justin, here's the thing. Because, Justin, you are from Shelbyville, and because I spent the first 5 years of my life in Shelbyville with a little interlude in Evansville in between, we are actually philanthropically giving away both sets of tickets to both of you for participating. So, Justin, Matthew, enjoy the state fair. Enjoy the little ride that goes around overhead while you eat a corn dog or a corn on the cob or an elephant ear or whatever it might be. And Eddie will get your information, and he also will line up Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts, who joins us next. Technically speaking, this portion is not what's happening on West 56, but rather what's happening in Westfield, where Colts camp has the day off from a practice standpoint. They're back at it tomorrow. Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts, joining us on the program. Matt, so far, I will begin with this. In the few practices that we have seen, the question mark going into camp that you feel like is still the one that is the biggest enigma that we don't, and I realize it's going to be hard to know at this point any answers to anything, but the one that you say to yourself, you know what, this one is going to continue and linger to be a question for probably longer than others would be what?
I think it's probably what's going on at free safety right now. Going into camp, we knew it was going to be a little bit of a battle to see if Nick Cross could end last year as the starter and begin this year as the starter and kind of take the reins of that position. Big year for him going into year number 3. And, he started off camp as the starter at free safety running with Julian Blackmon, just like he was at the beginning, or I should say during the spring. But the last couple of days, I don't know what really the motivation is for it, but you're starting to see a little bit more rotation there. And again, it's early, it's camp, that's what this time of year is for. But it does kind of, I think you have to bring it up a little bit because you're seeing more rotation with Rodney Thomas, who got a lot of starts with the team on defense as a rookie. And then his playing time kind of tailed off towards the end of the season as Nick Cross came on. And then you're seeing Ronnie Harrison get some run with the first-team defense as well. And Harrison's had a really interesting journey in the NFL, but specifically with the Colts, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that he's looking for an opportunity. Last year in training camp, his phone rings, the Colts call, but they say, hey, the stipulation is we want to try you at linebacker. You've started 48 career games at safety, but we think you've got the position flexibility to play linebacker, something he never done. So he comes in and, just grabs the opportunity. It's a chance to continue on his journey in the NFL and, has an open mind about it. And his first game comes in, gets an interception. It's kind of a game-changing play, has a pick six against the Bengals last year, and then goes back to strong safety at the end of the season, starts the last 2 games when Julian Blackmon goes out. And then in the spring, he's playing both safety and at linebacker. And now he's back to safety, but it's free safety, not strong safety, because Julian Blackmon is back after, getting banged up towards the end of last year. So quite a journey for Ronnie Harrison, but someone that I still think is squarely in the mix to rotate and see, the Colts trying to see who that best option is to play the free safety spot after Julian Blackmon last year had a career year playing strong safety.
Matt, sticking with the secondary, we had Juju Brents on yesterday, and I asked him the question to be able to give rebuttal to one of my criticisms and many criticisms in the market of the cornerback room outside of him and Kenny Moore, which is young, inexperienced. Are they being too bullish on the level of growth and step forward that members of that room could take this year? And he basically acknowledged that the young label is getting thrown around, but said that, they got dogs, they got hardworking guys in that secondary and that they can surprise some people this year. Are you seeing similar aspects of that in the early goings of camp, that in reality, this is a group that has gotten better over the course of an offseason?
Yeah, I think Juju Brents specifically has gotten way better, and you chalk that up primarily just due to availability, right? Because last year he only played 8 games, missed basically all of the offseason workout program, missed a big chunk of training camp. So all of this time that he's getting now compared to last year is just big-time bonus. And talked to Jalen Jones after practice yesterday and kind of asked him a similar question about the fact that, some that cover the team and fans say they should have brought in a veteran free agent at the cornerback position to go along with Kenny Moore. Because the reality is, Kenny started 89 career games, but the 3 guys that are squarely in the mix to play a lot more this year, right? Dallas Flowers and Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, those 3 guys have combined for just 23 starts. But again, the Colts have said a lot by their actions, or in this case, their inactions at that position, and going out on the open market or the outside market to bring in another cornerback because of the the confidence they have in those guys and the ceiling that those guys possess and the potential that they have to be special players. So I think if Juju Brents can continue to stay healthy, knock on wood, so far he has, I think you go ahead and pencil him in as one of your outside corners. And then right now, Jalen Jones is getting a lot of run with the first-team defense at the other outside corner. But Flowers is in there enough to be, I think, again, you consider that the position battle that's still ongoing, that's still kind of up in the air. But those guys they're going to be asked to do a lot this year. The Colts are confident in those guys. And I think another layer of the Colts' confidence in that group is just their defensive line, their pass rush this year, or going into the season. Obviously, it took a little bit of a hit with Samson Ebukam going down, but I think why they think that secondary, that young secondary, can hold up is because of the Colts' ability this year to consistently, hopefully, get after the quarterback.
Matt Taylor is our guest. Matt, I'm going to ask you to do a little exercise here. You ready?
I can exercise. Let's go.
Okay. You're a young guy. You can exercise, right? Here's our exercise. I touched on this yesterday because this happens seemingly every year with the Colts. I want you to envision when you are joining us midway through the season, courtesy of Shelby Materials, by the way. So you're joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line, and the weather is kind of cold outside, and the Colts just got done playing a game that was flexed into like a big primetime game where the whole country's watching, and they went on the road, and they get a win. And they got a win because a guy that had not been a name that you had called a lot, his number was called, and he stepped up and had a big game. We've seen this a lot in the past. I think Jonathan Williams comes to mind, or some guy that when you come on the radio with us, we go, hey,
yeah,
where did this come from? And you say to us at that time, I saw back in camp that this guy kind of just had flashes and wasn't going away. That guy or that position most likely to happen this year is going to be you telling us about who.
Well, I'll give you two, one on both sides of the ball or each side of the ball. I think on offense, a kind of a underrated storyline going into camp in terms of a position battle is backup running back. I don't think there's any reason, if you're a big Colts fan, to not have confidence in Trey Sermon if he needs to be a 3-down running back, or if he needs to come in the second half of a game and, again, knock on wood, Jonathan Taylor gets banged up. I think he's more than capable of getting, 15 carries in a game and ripping off a couple of big runs, continuing a drive or catching the ball out of the backfield in a big spot. I think he's a darn good football player. Right now, you would, I think, solidly write him in, maybe in heavy pencil, maybe not Sharpie, but I think he's your lead dog to be your backup running back. And I think you should feel pretty good about that. And then on defense, a name that is starting to get more run and more recognition, and it's kind of in the same vein as Ronnie Harrison, is Jalen Carlisle because of his position flexibility. Was a safety at Missouri, just kind of a football player. Like wherever they needed him to play, that's where he played. And a guy that literally grew every single year at Missouri, both on the field and then height-wise. Really cool story about how every year in college he just kept shooting up and up and up all the way up to around 6'3", 6'4". But the guy is physical. He's athletic as all get out. Right now he's running as kind of like that third linebacker in the base defense. And I don't think there's any reason to think if the Colts do go base, he's not your guy. And I think, again, more than capable of, coming in and, I keep saying this, but knock on wood, Zaire Franklin or E.J. Speed goes out. I think he's probably in the mix, with Shagun Alubi or, a Liam Anderson. But first, it's all about making the roster first. But I think he would be probably your, first or second option at the very least, to go in a backup role to play linebacker or play in the base defense and make a play, because he looks like a fish right in water being asked to move a position from safety to linebacker in college, and, looks pretty, graceful and comfortable doing it all so far.
Now, Matt, when it comes to special team, and look, it's a huge – special teams is such an important part of a roster. And very seldomly do you see guys that they are there because they are literally it's like, well, special teams is his ceiling, but he does it so well, we got to keep him, da-da-da. Usually it's guys that have flexibility to be backups, as you talked about, depth at other positions. How much of when they're going through the process of developing special teams or figuring out who is going to complement the roster with that, how much of that is player attitude? In other words, is there any way to measure whether or not a guy who goes into camp assuming he's going to be an NFL linebacker or an NFL tight end, but is okay with the relegation, quote unquote, of playing special teams and the willingness to do it? How do you measure that, and how important is that mental aspect of that?
Well, it's a way for guys to A, make a roster, and B, make a blank load of money, doing it. And there's a lot of guys that aren't, mainstays, all 22 guys, or I should say, 11 on offense and 11 on defense, that have made, a killer living just playing special teams and being ready to go on either offense or defense in case there's an injury or the team gets in a pinch, what have you. I mean, Matthew Slater, one of the greatest players, special teams players of all time. The Colts in the last couple of years have had some really good special teams kind of niche guys. Ashton Doolin's in that mix. George Odom was in that mix. Heck, even E.J. Speed. We think of E.J. Speed now, in the present as just game changer, freak athlete, guy that can cover, really good tackler, loves physicality, because we saw him play defense last year. But in his first 4 years, he was mainly a special teams guy. You think of him making game-changing plays, blocking punts against Tennessee and scoring touchdowns and things like that. So it's the buy-in early on in guys' careers, knowing that, hey, even though I was the guy or the stud in college, the NFL is a different animal, and things just get more and more difficult the longer you play football and you go up a level. You're not going to be, the big fish in a small pond any longer, and you kind of have to, recalibrate your mindset and what you're willing to do to stay in the game and play the game, and again get paid handsomely to do it. And I think the Colts big time measure that kind of stuff. Like, I was talking with Grant Stewart after practice a couple of days ago, and him talking about how much is on his plate on a weekly basis because he is a core special teams player, and now he's got to figure out the different nuances of covering kicks or returning kicks with the new kickoff rule, plus always being engaged and taking mental reps as a starting linebacker and making sure he's watching film on the opposing offense. Like, it's just exhausting how much stuff he's got to worry about, but the Colts love those guys, and attitude and character is a big thing they try to vet and kind of flush out as they sign these guys to get that advantage, like you said, in the third phase of the game.
And you know what's so funny, Matt? And I don't know the number on this, but I think you'll agree with me. I think people would be surprised to know the percentage of players in the NFL that are playing a position that is totally different than what they played and or starred in, like in high school. You know what I mean? The number of linebackers at the NFL level that were wide receivers in high school or college, or went into college at a totally different position, and then some coach saw that their body type was different, et cetera.
Right.
And that kind of flexibility probably does pay off in the long run, right?
Yeah, as you're talking there, I'm thinking of Joe Wright. Joe Wright didn't even play college football.
Right.
But had the body type. You see that a lot with basketball players moving either, offensive linemen as they put weight on guys, or, and they're, Jelani Woods has a basketball background. He also played quarterback too in college for a stint at Virginia and Oklahoma State. And then everybody knows about Mo Alley Cox. Even again, E.J. Speed. E.J. Speed his story is amazing. He was a wide receiver in college at a Division III school, and he wasn't even on the Colts' radar until about three or 4 weeks before the draft. And now, again, he's making up arguably the best linebacking duo in the NFL between he and Zaire Franklin. So these guys are just freak athletes, Jake. And sometimes you just have to tell them, hey, we're going to move you here, and we're going to ask you to do this. It might be a little bit foreign to them, but it's amazing to me watching these guys and how quick they can pick these things up because they are just so athletic, and all these transferable skills from different sports in different positions. They can pick it up so quickly and be difference makers.
Voice of the Colts, Matt Taylor, is our guest. He's brought to you by Shelby Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts, and he joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. By the way, Matt, I'm slightly disappointed that Jake didn't jump at this, but I'll do it for him in this case. The proper answer for breakout players of camp that might potentially catch you specifically by surprise would have been Derek Slyqua, but that's okay. We'll give you the pass there. That's all right.
Not even that's not. Listen, that's not even a breakout.
I have heard your guys' infatuation with this guy, and I kind of knew. I like to think I knew his story going into camp, but you guys have inspired me to dig deeper a little bit.
I'm just a passenger. I can't take away from Jake's message here. He's the torchbearer, but Matt, I do support it.
Matt, when they're on Thursday night, one night on a Thursday night game and some snowy game somewhere, and he's the guy that saves them. On your way back to the plane, you can call me if you want. I'll fill you in. I don't want you to, you know what I mean. I want to make sure you're up to speed.
Yeah, you're gonna be up till 2 a.m. just raising your hand and fist pumping anybody that can get in touch with you, taking credit for that one.
He'd be awake anyway, but it's
Ithaca College, baby, Ithaca College. Right?
Speaking of that wide receiver room, though, Matt, I thought going in that there was going to be a real wide receiver competition between Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell, and the more I watch clips, whether it's from yourself or from Casey Valier or Kevin Bowen or James Boyd, anybody out there, and I'm looking forward to us, being out there next week. But it appears this might very well be just a situational snap count distribution between Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell. Not to say that one might not wind up being better than the other, but sure, maybe it is Pierce on the depth chart as wide receiver 3, let's say, by the time week 1 starts. They very much do a variety of different skill sets very well, to the point that I could see this being just a snap count distribution thing for certain scenarios in game or as game script presents itself versus, oh no, this guy is clearly the better wide receiver. Am I reading too much into that, or do you see this being a situational operation because of their unique skill sets, even though one will inevitably be higher up the depth chart than the other?
I read it kind of the same way, and I wish I knew the answer to this, but I don't think anybody does, and I don't think we're going to get a good read on it until about, maybe a month or so into the season, when we get a feel for, how Shane Steichen is going to use all these different weapons in the offense. So I'm with you. I wouldn't get fixated on, who's listed first on the depth chart or who's out there in the first play of the game. Pay more attention to impact and situational football and overall snap counts and things like that. I will say that, when it comes to Alec Pierce, and I've said this for the last, 6 months since the end of the season or so, but I don't think there's any player or any receiver, pass catcher, let's put it that way, that has been more impacted by the quarterback carousel than Alec Pierce. And there's been, I thought last year there were a lot of times where Pierce had a hard time having the ball go his way because of the skill set of Gardner Minshew and his strengths and just sort of the aesthetics of the offense and what the Colts were trying to do with Gardner Minshew versus, what they can do with Anthony Richardson now that he's back. And I think you're seeing that so far early on in camp. We kind of, the first 2 years of Alec Pierce's career, some have kind of pigeonholed him as just a go ball receiver, and he's the master of tight roping the sidelines and, getting the jump ball. And he's certainly really good at that. And I think there's going to be more opportunities for plays like that to stretch the field and, to lighten the box in the running game, which is really important. But, I think he's more than just that. We saw him early on in camp with some explosive plays over the middle, coming back for the ball, kind of being diverse in his route running ability and the ways he can get involved. So I think this is going to be such a breath of fresh air for Alec Pierce with a quarterback like Anthony Richardson that can get him the ball in the ways that he can best be utilized within this offense. And I just think that with the quarterback now, you're going to see a lot unlocked about Pierce's game. And so however they get it, right, no matter what happens, This year, the Colts have to be more dynamic on the outside, and that comes from everybody that has talked about it. Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, Jim Bob Cooter, Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman. The Colts know they have to be more threats on the outside to lighten the box, help that running game in order for the offense to really reach its full potential. But I fully suspect Pierce is going to be a bigger part of that this year because he's put on more muscle, more mass, if you will. He's a bigger player, more physical. But I just think they're going to be able to tap into his resources better with Anthony Richardson at quarterback.
Matt, if I were to show you, let's say that I was to take video of 10 throws and plays from Anthony Richardson in camp 1 year ago, and then 10 plays or throws of Anthony Richardson this week, other than some of the names or the jersey numbers that are catching said balls, the difference between the two, you would be able to tell that the second set is this year's video versus last year's how?
I think it's quick release. It's decision making, or as the Colts like to say, accelerated vision, knowing where to go with the football, putting it where it's supposed to go, but doing it faster and recognizing it quicker and letting playmakers make plays. One of the more underrated things about Anthony Richardson's game is his quick release. And we all know he's got a cannon, and he can throw the ball, and he's got a great, tight spiral. It looks pretty, slowed down and, NFL film, cinema type fashion. But it really is, I would say, the quick release and the decision making. And the great thing about camp so far, and again, it's camp, and the first couple of days of practices have been kind of glorified OTAs, and he's not getting hit. It's not real game. I get it. But it's better than the alternative, right? But he's completing about 70% of his passes so far in training camp during 11-on-11 work. That's a really good number.
That compares, like, if you go to, we'll say Andrew Luck, prime Andrew Luck, would be at what percentage?
Yeah, prime Andrew Luck was, I think one of his better seasons. You guys can look it up for me. I don't have it in front of me.
In camp in 11-on-11s.
Sure. Yeah. Andrew was probably flirting with the high 60s. I think his best season was 2014. Games, I think it was like 66, 67%, somewhere in that neighborhood. So again, it's camp and it's early, but you love to see that. And a lot of guys are getting involved too. A couple of years ago in 2022, when Matt Ryan was the quarterback, the ball was going in camp to Michael Pittman Jr. It seemed like 2 out of every 3 passes. With Anthony Richardson, it's guys out of the backfield. It's certainly Pittman, but it's Downs too and their chemistry.
How far through his reads does he go before then all of a sudden he panics a little bit? In other words, is he a 2-3 read check down guy level comfort yet?
I think he's getting there. That's probably a better question for Shane and Jim Bob. But just from what I can tell, what you're seeing, the lessons that he learned last year by sitting out and taking those injuries and understanding how important he is to the overall success of this team and the viability of the franchise, I think he's putting those things to good use so far. In that, to your point, when the first read's not there or the second read's not there, he's doing a good job of escaping the pocket. And quite frankly, he's practicing throwing the ball away and living to play another down, or when the defensive line gets the best of the O-line, he's, simulating taking a sack, kind of dirting the ball and waving the white flag, knowing that, hey, we'll get them next series. It's okay to punt here. So those are the valuable lessons that I think are starting to show up in camp that he learned last year by missing out 13 games. Matt
Taylor is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. His visit is courtesy of Shelby Materials, shelbymaterials.com. Lastly, Matt, a year ago when I was doing the show with Kevin in the morning, and we did a lot of shows as they are, he and Andy, with the wake-up call out at Grand Park, there was a rooster when I would get to, like early, and we were the first ones on, you could hear the rooster from pretty far away. Now, you get there a little bit later for camp. Towards the end of our show was when you would arrive typically. Am I correct in saying that it would be like probably a quarter mile away where I would hear that rooster because there was nobody there? Is that what it's like with Andy Sweeney out there now when you get out of your car?
Yeah, I can hear Andy from 191st Street, I think. Yeah, no, it's great. Listen, it's great, man. I get there usually about an hour and a half before practice, and Jake, it's amazing to me how many people are already there lined up trying to get in and trying to, take their kids to, the Colt City and do all the fun interactive things, and then get a good bleacher spot to watch practice, to see their heroes. And that's the part that I love. You just kind of take that for granted sometimes because you get lost in the job, and sometimes it feels like work, and you try to not let that happen. But then when you walk into Graham Park and you see fathers and sons and families and diehard Colts fans with the gear and the jerseys and the face paint, like this is entertainment for people. This is their release. This is their ability to kind of lose themselves and something fun. And that's the best part of trying to deliver or enhance that entertainment, that fun to other people by doing this.
Matt, we appreciate the time as always. We, again, thank Shelby Materials for making it possible for us to be able to chat with you and look forward to doing it over the course of the year. We'll be out there at camp next week. Look forward to seeing you then.
All right, boys. Look forward to it. Thank you.
All right, Matt Taylor, the voice of the Indianapolis Colts, joining us on the program. Now, Eddie, we gave away our 2 tickets for the State Fair, our 2 sets of tickets for the State Fair, right?
Yes, sir.
And does that mean that we are done with our ticket giveaways for today, or we still have more?
We still have one more.
And that's for Foghat, right?
Yes.
Do we have a foghorn? One of the. Do we have one of those? Do they do that at every hockey game?
Yes.
think so.
Yes. Yes.
That's a foghorn, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
What you like that foghorn leghorn?
What?
Foghorn leghorn? Did
Never
you
heard
like
of it.
Never heard of foghorn leghorn?
No.
I say, listen to me when I'm talking to you about. Are you familiar with foghorn leghorn, Jimmy?
I am familiar
Okay,
with Foghorn Leghorn,
now that
yeah.
you say that, I am. I didn't know that was Foghorn Leghorn.
Oh yeah, foghorn leghorn. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do now.
He's a huge rooster, but he has a little bit of an attitude, so you got to be careful in what exactly you're
I'll
calling
say,
him.
I'll
'cause
say
people
yeah,
like
he's
it.
got the draw to him.
I'll say,
Yeah.
listen to when I'm talking to you, boy. That's foghorn leghorn. We don't have tickets to give away for foghorn leghorn, but we do for fog hats, right?
Yes.
Okay, but we don't have a foghorn.
Is
sound.
that what Foghorn Leghorn calls his hat? Is that where we got that? Is that the?
That's a good. I'd like to know how Fog Hat got its name.
Oh wow, thanks, Eddie.
You're welcome.
I don't know that deserved that.
Now
but
again,
I
Three
honor your
Dog Night
ruling.
was supposed to be playing tomorrow night. We've given away tickets for that. If you have won tickets, don't worry. Three Dog Night unable to make tomorrow night's show, so Fog Hat they immediately called, and it I don't know if you know this or not, but it turns out that Fog Hat and this I was just informed of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday we were talking about how I want to get a hat from Kincaid's, the meat,
Right.
the butcher place up on the north side. Fog Hat apparently wanted a Kincaid's hat. They were driving towards Kincaid's. They got the phone call, and they just busted a U-turn right there. They're right by the fairgrounds. Turn around, went back. Fog Hat now in for tomorrow. We have tickets to give away for that, and we will do it on the other side. See, I would assume so, but this is from the soundtrack of it, the movie Dazed and Confused.
I
This
don't
may
think
shock
so.
you, Jake. No.
I don't think so.
That was the breakthrough movie for what actor?
I'm going to guess Matthew McConaughey.
Correct. I mean, he has several great lines in that movie, but that's where, all right.
I'm gonna
That's where that
label it
came
as bits and pieces. Now that you say that, now that I see
Fair.
the character,
Yeah.
But I
I've
don't
heard him
know
on the
that's real
GMV
or-
rejoiners.
Yeah, definitively, that's where I've probably heard it the most.
from. There are several rejoiners for J&B, yes.
Is that the? It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
Yes.
Like, okay, yeah.
Yes.
definitely that.
That's a JMV rejoiner for certain.
That's one of those movies that the whole point of it is it just reminds people of an era if you were alive in that era. And I was obviously really, really young in that era. But who was the pitcher for the San Francisco Giants that looks just like the this is going to drive me nuts.
How recent are we talking here?
The pitcher for the Giants,
Eddie's your only hope in this room.
last name starts with an L.
Let's talk about Lincecum. Surely not talking about him.
Thank
Tim
you.
Lincecum?
Tim Lincecum, thank you.
That's the only pull I could do you for
Tim
Giants
Lincecum.
pitchers.
Tim Lincecum looks very, very, very similar to the kid in Dazed and Confused, the baseball player in Dazed and Confused. Eddie is
I should
looking
probably
now.
No, I'm not. I should probably watch that movie, right?
You know what? I mean, it's not in the level of Fast Times. It's good. It's basically just about a 1970s high school group, like at the end of the school year. It's cool.
Would you call it
I
just
would
like
say it has
Confused
like an
sounds like my Saturday
overwhelming-
nights.
What's that?
Dazed and Confused sounds like my Saturday nights.
That's right.
I thought it was days ending in Y.
Sounds like Dazed and Confused sounds half the time like you're noon to 3. What's that, Jimmy?
Would you describe it as just your stereotypical, there's one of these for every generation coming of age film, like that if you missed that but you saw one in the 2000s for your age group, it probably is the same type of feel?
So you have American Pie, right,
Yeah,
for the
right.
late 90s, Fast Times for the 80s. The difference being, though, it's looking back. So the movie came out in 93 or 94.
Yeah.
And it's I think the class of 77 maybe. So it is just literally like a day in the life of being, or a week in the life of being a 15 to 17-year-old kid in the mid 70s.
Yeah.
There's not an overwhelming plot to it, truth be told. It just kind of follows what life was like. I mean, in small town America, in that time, muscle cars and weed and Little League
All right.
baseball and right,
I'm in.
apparently right at Betty's alley. All right, Fog had tickets though because that song it's a great soundtrack, by the way. How would you like to give away said tickets, Eddie?
Well, we have one caller who has been patiently waiting.
239-1070 is the telephone number. Others are now calling in. I can appreciate that was patiently waiting, but do we reward somebody who was ahead of the curve, or do we consider that to be cheating and jumping the line?
Well, there were 4 callers initially. 3 of them hung up. Someone did stay, so I feel like we should reward the person that did stay. 'Cause that means,
Should we do this roulette style?
well, duh, that's all we do with these.
Okay, that's right. We'll go roulette style and play a little get to know your listener. Line number 2, you have been patient. It is greatly appreciated. We're going to reward you for it. Your name is, and you are on the air right now. Turn down your radio, though. Listen to that guy's voice. How sexy does that sound? Okay,
Asleep, perhaps?
you there? Are you there, sir or madam, on line number 2?
Hello?
Hello? Okay, you are on the air. Your name, please.
Melissa?
Melissa! All right, now, Melissa, turn down your radio. We appreciate the fact that you're listening. Now, Melissa, you're aware of the fact that you've called the Fan for Aquarium Company, right?
No.
What station did you think you were calling, Melissa?
Oh, the fan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. We're off to a good start here. Melissa, we're going to play, if you don't mind me doing so, we like to do a little segment called Get to Know Your Listener. We've had a lot of success with this. Kids in particular love it in our research. Are you willing to participate, Melissa, in a little round of Get to Know Your Listener?
Sure.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, Melissa, are you a native of Indianapolis?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And you attended what high school?
New Palestine.
New Pal. Okay. And you have or have not been to the Frosty Boy?
I have.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, love a good crunch cone from the Frosty Boy, Jake.
Yeah, the Frosty Boy's pretty good. Okay, Melissa, how long have you been listening to this program or this radio station?
Well, I'd say as long as my husband has.
Okay.
So-
And now, what's the husband's name?
Jared.
Jared. Okay. Now, do you guys share a car, and Jared has locked it on this station, and ripped off the knob? Is that why you're listening?
Well, there's that, and he puts it on his car and my car. So anytime I turn my car on, we're listening.
Well, that's much appreciated, Melissa. Now, in terms of this program, and I know it might get confusing because you're talking all day long, and there's all kinds of people here, but in terms of this program, tell me what you do or don't like about Query and Company, which is the name of the show that you've called in.
I like everything about it.
Melissa, how long have you been in politics? No, I'm just kidding. Now, Melissa, do you and Jared have kids?
No, cats.
You have cats, okay. How many cats do you have?
2.
And you have 2 cats, and the cats' names are?
Valentino and Rufus.
Valentino and Rufus. Now, I can appreciate that. That's awesome. And they're good kitties, right?
They're the best.
Okay.
They're bald.
Excuse me?
They're bald. They're sphinxes.
Oh, now are they related?
No.
Because I would think that if you're going to have one of those, the hairless cats that you're talking about, if you're going to have one of those and then have a second cat, it's got to be another hairless cat as to avoid embarrassment for them, right?
Yes.
Okay. Melissa, when you go to the state fair, is there anything, or is it the state fair or the concert we're giving away here?
Concert.
Sorry, the
Concert.
Okay, so that's at the free stage at the fair, so you're going to be in the area. If you're going to get one item of food to eat there, Melissa, what are you getting?
Oh, my goodness. Probably the fish sandwich.
The fish sandwich. Wow. Okay, well that's definitely brave. Are you going to take any extra back for Valentino and Rufus?
Maybe.
Okay. So Melissa, you are on your way, you and Jared, and we have how many tickets does Melissa get for this?
Dose.
2 tickets?
That would be
Perfect.
dose.
Okay, Valentino and Rufus will be home alone. Now I guess you don't have to, they don't shed much then, right? That's a real benefit to this, right?
Yes. They don't shed at all.
Okay. And those are expensive cats, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good stuff. Melissa, last thing, what line of work are you in, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in sports security.
Sports security. Like in
Yeah,
case somebody wants to steal a badminton team, you're there to lock things down?
No, I do the private air charters
Oh,
for the
really?
team. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, well, I shouldn't ask. We have. Who's the biggest jerk you've ever dealt with? Who's the
No,
biggest
that's-
prima donna?
Not allowed to speak on that.
Oh, well, you didn't say the name of the company, right?
That's true, but still.
She
All
did
right.
say her name. That's the other problem.
That is true. Well, Melissa, you and Jared have a wonderful time at the concert. I appreciate, and tell Jared in particular, because it sounds like he's the leading influencer here for listening to the station. But I also take great pride in the fact that you're able to enjoy it as well, because it doesn't sound like you have control of the radio. But we appreciate that you are able to enjoy it, right?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, Melissa, enjoy it. We will get you on your way. The other fun thing about today, Jimmy, you know what today is, right? Not only is it the day on the eve of the concert where Jared and Melissa are going to go out, and then Valentino and Rufus are going to have a party because they're home alone for the Fog Hat concert, but guess what else today is, Jimmy?
What is today, Jake?
Do we have
There's football.
Do we have the breaking news sounder? It is indeed the Hall of Fame game, which is tonight, and I don't know if that means that there's going to be a coagulation problem in the middle of the field in Canton. Who's in the Hall of Fame game?
That would be the Bears and the Texans.
Yep.
And we're going to see how many players that we actually become familiar with over the course of the regular season?
Ooh, terrific question. You should know the starting quarterback for Chicago.
Well, is he
It's
going to
not
start
Caleb.
tonight?
Not Caleb. Tyson Bagent, I think, is getting the start for the Bears, and there's a lot of people last year that wanted him to be the starter.
So he gets the big nod tonight for the 2 drives of which people will be watching. But the big story today, the big breaking news, is this is, in fact, on the other side. Thank you, Eddie. Today is the first day of August, which means it is the first time that officially Jimmy Cook will do his plays of the day, courtesy of our friends at Greenfield Signs and Lighting. Now, the company, this is a 4 generations now from a family-owned business of being in the sign business, but it is now, I believe, year 12 or 13 for Greenfield Signs in terms of that name, because the family itself based in Greenfield, but their offices and where they are making the signs right here on the east side of Indianapolis. And we went over there and saw it, and it's wonderful. Whether you're talking about a huge lit sign for the top of a building for your business, whether you're talking about smaller signs for restrooms or directories in an office building. Maybe you just simply want a sign that says childhood home of Jake Query, which we don't now actually have to do because I don't know if I've told you this or not. My parents now not moving. So I didn't have to cut out the closet and then make the historical landmark of the house itself, at least for now. But wonderful people, wonderful family business, great work. And Jimmy, I know you're excited to have them on
No,
board.
I'm thrilled to work with them. In general, it's awesome to be able to have a local business tie in with the sponsorship. Greenfield Signs and Lighting does all kinds of different custom signs and lighting work, whether you are, you could be, as you mentioned, Jake, a hospital, you could be a local restaurant, whatever the case may be. They take care of all your signage, be it indoor or outdoor. They just recently got done finishing the IU Trident, the big IU logo that you see at the campus of IU Indy. So very much looking forward to partnering with them, and hopefully that if the plays aren't ringing true, you know that the signs will never let you down over at Greenfield Signs and Lighting.
That's exactly right. And we'll get Jimmy's plays of the day next.
of the day brought to you by the fine folks at Greenfield Signs and Lighting, professional comprehensive sign company, 2 locations in central Indiana, family owned and managed business, designing and creating effective and attractive signs for more than 4 generations. First impressions are always important. You'll never have a bad first impression with Greenfield Signs and Lighting behind all your branding. We'll head over to Paris for the Olympic Games to start today's plays of the day. We'll take Kate Douglas of Team USA to win the 200-meter breaststroke, the gold medal swim in that, taking place at 3:11 Eastern. She's at plus 140, the second best odds to take home the gold medal. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Team USA on the men's side for soccer, they are into the knockout rounds for the first time in 24 years. They will take on Morocco at 9 in the morning. We'll take Team USA to win outright in advance, that at plus 130 odds. To baseball, we'll take the Baltimore Orioles.
Hey,
root for me.
AKA Cute Fella to win on the money line. They're in Cleveland against the Guardians.
You like that Cute Fella moniker, don't you?
I love the Cute Fella moniker. I really do. We'll also take the Atlanta Braves, lay 1.5 on the run line as they take on the lowest payroll in baseball, arguably, the Miami Marlins. Will lay 1.5 there on the run line for the Braves. That game in Atlanta. Last one for you. Come on. Would I really be a degenerate if I didn't put something on the Hall of Fame game tonight? Give me the Houston Texans to win outright over the Chicago Bears. We'll bank on D'Amico Ryan's defensive prowess to lead the Bears to a W tonight. Eddie, any selections for the full slate from you?
no, did we figure out the payroll yesterday of the Athletics?
I couldn't. Every time I Googled it, it showed me start of season payroll. I could not find beginning of season payroll. So no, we did not. Unless you did reconnaissance research in your own right.
No.
On A's payroll. But the Marlins basically like $15 million in total payroll out there right now after the deadline.
By the way, the Chicago White Sox still have not won a game since I was there, right?
They have not. I took a picture. This was from SportsCenter yesterday. This was prior to yesterday. 17 straight losses to finish July. It's the second longest to finish a month in MLB history since the 1890 Pittsburgh, not Pirates, Pittsburgh Innocents.
The Innocents?
The Innocents.
The American League All-Star team has won a game more recently.
Now, the Innocents, is that INNOCENTS?
Correct.
Like the plural
Yes.
of innocent people?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I did no
And
more
what,
research.
What year
than
was that?
1890?
Jake, were you alive then?
Yeah. I was,
They're 13.
I was, but not innocent. Thank you.
Their 13 straight losses since the All-Star break are tied for the longest all time with the 1935 Atlanta Braves.
Eddie, do you have the breaking news sounder? It has not behooved me to tell people to turn down their radio and not listen to something, but if you are anticipating watching the Olympics this evening in prime time for gymnastics and do not want to know the results, then and just literally count to 4 and then turn back up, because I'm going to say, okay, turn down your radio now, and then you do it, and then I want you to turn it back up. Do not change the dial. Do not change the dial, okay? But I'm about to give a result.
Spoiler alert.
A spoiler alert.
Do we want to hit the pole position countdown?
And yes, that's an excellent way of doing it. Thank you, Eddie. Here we go. Simone Biles is the gymnastics all-around champion.
Woo, USA, USA.
That's it.
I had to be very quick about that.
Thank you for turning your radio back up. This is Query and Company, and we hope that you enjoy watching tonight in the Olympics if you are not watching the NFL Hall of Fame game.
Do you count Olympic viewing with the time zone difference in that upper echelon if you're watching during the day in the same vein as you do the NCAA tournament or
I think,
other like daytime sports?
I do think that, like were there Olympics in Australia, summer games in Australia when you're in Sydney, right?
Yes, 2000.
I thought that really did kind of hurt because the time difference was just so massive. Yeah, there is a little bit about it being in such a time difference that is, to me, because you're watching it and you have to remind yourself, especially in today's day, right, where you have all the results ahead of time and you're like, wait a minute. So when you're watching in the primetime slot, I do think it takes a little bit of wind out of the sails.
I would agree.
That you're watching it and you're thinking, wait, I've seen all this. This was earlier, you know.
I mean,
And I
no
don't
disrespect.
know-
Tirico and company, they do a great job on primetime. It's just it does lose its luster a bit.
What I just mentioned may actually have been televised live and is not being aired tonight. I don't know that.
It was televised.
It was televised
I was
live.
watching over here.
Yep. You get it on Gold Zone, or
So
you
we
can
had
get
people
it through
turn on the
main
radio
stuff.
for no reason whatsoever. J&B has walked in.
Well,
He's
some
got-
people do have actual jobs, Jay.
Yeah,
unlike
people
us.
like I know some people, like one of my buddies, he tries to avoid all news information on the Olympics so we can watch it in primetime. So
Oh, you tell him about Biles winning and everything? Hey, have fun with that, listeners.
We had people. Now here,
Well,
you know what? You know what?
Just blame it
Go-
on me.
John's up next, so turn your radio back down.
What nerd in this world's trying to wait to hear?
Jake, this is
Nobody
like
can
you in
wait
Jeopardy.
to hear.
I'm just being polite, John. I'm just being courteous to the masses.
Speaking of nerds, have you guys been driving around town? And
Oh,
I
it's
love the
here, right?
nerds too, because I dig Star Wars, right? Just not to the level in what some of these nerds do, but driving around downtown and welcome Gen Con. It's sold out, but please, I love them walking. Stay out of the cars and stay off of the scooters.
Now, the
Walking's much better because these nerds can't do anything
Well,
driving.
here's the thing. I used to, John, laugh at, and I was part of the group that like rolled my eyes
Yep.
at the people that dressed up like Boba Fett.
I
And then
love
I
Boba
realized
Fett.
one day, I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm walking into a Colts game, and some guy's got on
Yeah.
his Lee jeans and his Peyton Manning jersey. What's the
I
difference?
love Boba Fett. I love
You know?
Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I love Empire Strikes Back. I hate Yoda.
How do you
Yoda
hate
sucks. Yoda sucks.
Come on, man.
Yoda was
No,
boring. Yoda wanted to make you go
Did
to
you
sleep.
hate E.T. also?
I wasn't the biggest fan. I was all right with E.T., but that made you cry. Yoda didn't make you cry. You just thought this would be a bad Muppets character if
But
it
the
were
way-
on the Muppet Show.
I mean, that's kind of what he was, right?
yeah.
Who's the best Muppet? There's only one answer. here.
Who's the one that plays the drums? Gonzo?
No, it's Animal.
Animal. Oh, yeah.
Gonzo's got
Gonzo's the
he's got a big nose and
yeah.
he sleeps with chickens.
Yeah.
That's Gonzo.
Gonzo.
It's got to be now.
Oscar?
I'll tell you who's under Oscar Sesame Street.
Sesame
Oscar the
Street.
Grouch. Rolf is underrated because he's a dog that plays the piano, and that's cool. But the best is by far Fozzie.
Did you ever think Miss Piggy was hot?
Waka waka waka. No, but Kermit did.
Because she always kind of had.
Kermit
She
did.
did
She
have-
came in with a low cut gown.
She did that.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a bit of a tempter, if you will.
Yeah.
I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. For Kermit, it had to be rough dating her because you would think that some of the other Muppets were making moves, right? Animal for sure had to, right?
Who had the glasses? You go to McDonald's and get the glasses. You have any of the Muppet Show glasses? Remember when
Oh,
they
the
used to
best,
give away
yeah.
glasses?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
pint milk glasses.
I have those. I have a ton of those in my house right now.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah, the Charlie
had-
Brown ones too.
Do you remember the before that at the gas stations locally it was kind of a smoked glass, but the pint glasses with the NFL helmets on them, and basically all you got here was Bengals and Bears.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I still have some of those. How about this? Do you remember when Smucker's grape jelly
Yeah.
came
Jelly jars.
in? The jelly
Yep.
jar was then a glass, and it had a Muppet character at the bottom
It
of it,
had
and a
the-
Looney Tune character on the top. right?
Exactly. I have the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. I have all the Coca-Cola glasses from Christmas at my
Oh,
garage.
the
Yeah.
Santa
Santa.
Claus Christmas ones are
Yeah.
legendary.
Yeah. So who am I trying to keep that Biles won again from your audience here?
Anything else you want
Where-
to divulge?
Yeah, that's
Where-
right.
where
Her
are they
and
at?
Team USA won.
Eddie, you
gold
going to
as a
Gen
team.
Con today,
At
buddy?
the end of the Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis is alive or dead through the whole thing.
If you're going
What?
to Gen Con, hey, really quick, I know I got to start here, but if you're going to Gen Con, what category would you be? Where would you go? What would you want to see?
It's the celebration this year of Dungeons and Dragons anniversary.
Oh,
right?
man.
I know that. It's like the 40th anniversary or 50th
There's gonna be
anniversary of
some-
D&D.
Self-preservation going on in downtown Indy all weekend long around here.
I do know that supposedly
Yeah.
they're after Gen Con, and I don't mean this as a disparaging remark at all, but I've heard that some of the local hotels, that's one of their tougher after visit room cleaning experiences.
They have
because
to get out
people-
that neon light.
They play like people sit in there for like 3 days and lock themselves in a room and play video games the whole time.
And I don't have a problem with it.
but it's
I
not
like
very
it.
it's not
Yeah.
hygienic and a lot of barefoot people.
You think we could find Pitfall over there? I love the game Pitfall. Think they're playing that? I
That
love
would
it.
be awesome. That and Pong, right? Let's go to the Pong room. John's up next. We're back with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.